Good afternoon and welcome to the CRA meeting on, what's today, October 16th. We're sitting at City Council as a Community Redevelopment Agency. And if we could have an approval of the minutes from the September 18th meeting, please. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. Anyone want to speak on items not on today's agenda?
I think that's me, but I haven't turned this in.
Yep. All right. Come up to the microphone.
I was going to say good morning, but it's actually afternoon. I had a late night and kind of tired from the events that we had yesterday. My name is Eliseo Santana, and I am a resident of Clearwater. I've been a resident for quite a while, and I'm also not only a community organizer, but a leader in the Hispanic community and in the community in general. Currently, I hold several titles. I don't know. I'm the director for the state of Florida for LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, which is not only the oldest Hispanic group in the United States with over 94 years of young, but we have over 135,000 members, and I represent the state of Florida, and I reside in Clearwater, so I'm very active with that. But I speak to you in that capacity and in other capacities I want to say that one of the things that some of you, and I have to say thank you for those of you that were here at the celebration yesterday that we had at the Crest Lake Park, which was, I think was fantastic. And everyone that I've talked to tells me that it's probably the largest, most active participation of the Hispanic community in Clearwater in the recallable history that we have. And so one of the things that I want to point out to when it comes to the CRA and for all the other things that we're doing to try and develop our community is that it is so important for the city to engage with the leaders of our community. There were 12 Hispanic leaders that came together and partnered with the city just a short time ago. It was 5-6 weeks before this event took place. And in a very short notice, because of the Hispanic community being so diverse, there are segments of it. And it happens that our 12 leaders cover a segment of that community, and we were able to go out there and do grassroots development and communications. And that you could see, those that were there could see the effect of that, the community coming out and being vibrant, being a participation, being what we all want the community to be. And this is a good beginning, but I must give you that in order to have economic security, in order to have economic stimulus of our community, you have to involve those individuals that are the leaders in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a nice event yesterday. We enjoyed being there. Anyone else on items not on today's agenda? Not on the agenda.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is impromptu. I didn't plan on speaking, but since it is, just wanted to talk about the upcoming Community Family Fun Night that is co-sponsored by the City of Clearwater. Oh, my name, I'm sorry, Marilyn Turman, Clearwater, Florida. Anyway, so I wanted to make mention the fact that things are going extremely well, and we want to make sure not only that people come and have a great time when they're there, but that we send them home with some great information that's going to help to elevate them, be it information about a lot of the exciting things that are happening in the community from the upcoming CRA, the community grant recipients, some of the great programs that I know some of you have already heard about. And so I just want to make sure that you all know we really look forward to seeing each and every one of your faces there if possible. So thank you for your support and your partnership in this. Last year we were excited to welcome almost 3,000 people at the event last year. It was great, every age, every demographic, and I really love the seniors. Let me just say this real quick about the seniors. This is probably one opportunity, since many of them don't get the opportunity for the social engagement. They love to come, like my mom likes to people watch, so they like to come and sit in front of the stage and enjoy the opportunity. Well, she's not going to hear this, so it's okay. But nonetheless, it is important that we engage all of our community, whether young, old. So there's something for everybody. We're going to be having an adult fun gaming area for the adults to engage in activity as well as the youth. And so, again, thank you for your support, and we welcome all of you to come and participate. And I do have some flyers later I'll share with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on items not on the agenda?
Hello, everyone. My name is Dina Ramos, and I am the president, director of the Clearwater Hispanic Farmers Market. Along with the team that we have, we were spearheading the Hispanic Heritage Celebration of yesterday. And so I just came to say thank you, to recognize your work. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mayor Brian. All of you. Thank you so much. We would have not been able to do it without you. Absolutely. And so I just wanted to recognize that publicly and for the records. In all of our social medias, we just expressing, City of Clearwater, it's rocking. So thank you. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, absolutely. Vicky Shire, Ann Lopez, Kathleen, Eric Escamilla, all of you guys, Samantha Millette. So I just wanted to say thank you, guys. Thank you so much, and we are so very much grateful. And I just wanted to mention something real quick. Every city, every region, every area is sometimes identified for what they offer. They known for something, like Orlando, everybody says, oh, Disney. Oh, Mickey Mouse, yeah. And so every area is known for what they offer. And so it's just almost like an identity or personality, if you would, that would be so peculiar or for that particular area. And so in every decision that you make, I would encourage that you would think about that. Think about that every event or decision being considered that it identifies us. It identifies people. Murals, it speaks of us. It speaks of about our personality, of who we are, and what we offer. So what we are known for. What do you want to be known for? What does the city of Clearwater, this region, want to be known for? And so particularly for us, we concentrate, the Clearwater Hispanic Farmers Market, we concentrate about families and children because that's the nucleus of society, of, family. And so everything that we do focuses or is geared to bring that family atmosphere. And so just wanted to encourage you with those words. You're doing a great job, and we are so glad and honored to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, guys. My name is Angel. I'm the president and CEO of a company called Our Community First, in which we showcase different not-for-profits on our website to help people that are in need. So I wear many hats. I work 9 to 5. I work in the city of Clearwater, and I work with, development, down payment assistance, so that's my day job. But I have a passion about also working with community, and that's why Our Community First exists. I'm part of the 12th of the team, and we had an excellent event yesterday, and again, I want to thank all of you guys for attending. What I have to say is that it's an honor to be able to work with a city that is open-minded, to work with Latinos, and to also give us the opportunity to demonstrate that we can bring people in the circle of communication, but also with economic development and everything else. So I highly encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, and all I see is a brighter future for the city of Clearwater. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyone else on items not on the agenda? Okay, let's move forward with new business. Item 4.1, please.
Approve the contract for purchase of real property by the Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Clearwater for certain real property owned by Anna P. Bird with a purchase price of $350,000 and total expenditures not to exceed $402,000, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same.
Thank you, Chuck Lane, Economic Development and Housing Department, presenting on behalf of the CRA. This opportunity first came to us in May 2022, so we've been working on it for about a year and a half now. City and CRA staff never doubted that this was a strategic opportunity. It was really a matter of price. Through a lengthy negotiation, the seller has not been willing to come down to a price that could be supported with an appraisal. The proposed purchase price is $350,000. We had an independent appraisal done in June 2022, showing a market value of $224,000. More recently, we had another independent appraisal done that showed a market value of $297,500. After that appraisal was complete, staff noticed that some of the comparable properties that were referenced in that report had sold again at higher prices. So what we did is we considered the higher sales prices, and staff prepared an opinion of value as of August 15th, 2023, more recent than both of the other two appraisals. And the value came in at $323,400. So if you consider the most recent value prepared by staff, the $350,000 purchase price represents paying a $26,600 premium for the property. As I said earlier, this property provides a strategic opportunity. The city owns property immediately to the south. Acquisition of this property would result in city and CRA ownership of an entire block on North Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue between Tangerine Street and Carlton Street. Property contains two contiguous parcels. One is vacant parcel fronting North MLK. The other parcel contains a small single-family home and a two-story mixed-use structure on the corner of North MLK and Carlton. The structure has a residential component on the second floor and a commercial space on the ground floor. It used to be used as a restaurant. If acquired, the staff recommendation is to demolish the single-family home. It's currently boarded up and vacant. We would then advertise a competitive process to sell the property to a nonprofit partner who would own and operate the property as a property manager. The sales price to the nonprofit would very likely be lower than the CRA's acquisition price that we're proposing at $350,000. Once the property is owned by the nonprofit, we would coordinate with them to rehabilitate the property using state and federal funds allocated to the city for affordable housing and community development programs. The ground floor would once again become a functional restaurant, with the second floor would be rehabilitated and reserved for affordable housing. The nonprofit would be responsible for lease-up and all aspects of property management. It's important to note that the CRA's acquisition of this property will remove the property from the tax rolls. The restaurant, once activated, may reimpose an ad valorem tax. The housing component may be eligible for a continued exemption. Staff views this transaction as a loss leader intended to stimulate private investment along the commercial corridor. Also important to note, there are currently 2 to 3 tenants, I'm told 2 full-time tenants and one kind of comes and goes, living on the second floor of the 2-story structure, and they're on a month-to-month verbal lease. The seller's representative is fully aware that we will not close on this transaction unless the premises is entirely vacant. It's not safe for habitation. We will conduct a walkthrough just prior to closing, and if there's any evidence of occupancy, we will delay the closing. We're not going to evict anyone. From staff's perspective, we can be flexible if there's a need to accommodate a delay. We've offered to communicate with our community partners to see if there's any availability in our existing housing units, and we'll do so if asked. That concludes my presentation. I'll take questions, please.
Any questions or comments on this item? Yes.
So I had 2 great conversations with 2 members of the Urban Coalition, and I really wanted to understand their vision and how our role would be. And I was very encouraged by what they told me. they basically think that this is a Kickstarter for this block where they see it as the nucleus of the effort. And so after reviewing the renderings and discussing what their vision was, I'm very comfortable to proceed. And I'm glad you talked about the tenants, because I drove by last night looking at another home for their Halloween decorations, and I did see tenants over there last night. So I'm glad that you addressed that, because it was certainly one of the things I was going to ask today.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think this is a great investment for the area. It really will be a Kickstarter. I know it's building a spot that the community was really passionate about. I'm glad that we're able to find a way to save that, improve it, and make it a wonderful, functional place again.
Yes.
Well, I disagree. I've been trying to get a handle on this thing ever since it was brought to me. We've got a vacant lot, a parcel. We've got a two-story mixed use, which bothers me because I know if we buy it, there's going to have to be a lot of renovations to that, because you can't have commercial on the first floor and tenants on the second floor or residential without 2-hour fire separation. And I used to do these remodels of old properties, and they may be living in there now, but if the city buys this, it's going to be some more money that's going to have to be spent in there. And I just don't see it, I just can't get my brain wrapped around this being a strategic opportunity. The city owns the complete block across from it, and half the block that's related to this. I just think I'm probably going to be voting no on this, because I just don't see the value of it.
My question was brought to me, by our attorney, that we do have tenants, you said, but then you said it's not safe to reside there? Is that?
It didn't appear to me. We walked through a month and a half, 2 months ago. The floors were soft, there were holes. I wouldn't be comfortable continued occupancy under the city's ownership or CRA's ownership. It doesn't appear to be safe.
And the owner and the city are going to try to find new places for the current tenants?
If they haven't asked us to do so, but we can communicate with our nonprofit partners and see if there's availability. We wouldn't take on that responsibility per se.
Is there anyone here from the nonprofit partner that wants to speak to this item? Please come forward. I'd just like to hear a little bit of your plan. And, obviously, if it's a good plan, it's going to help the community, I'll be for it, but I just want to make sure it just doesn't sit empty.
Thank you, Gloria Campbell, and I am the Executive Director of the Clearwater Urban Leadership Coalition. Absolutely, as Chuck said, this is not something that we take lightly. It was not something we spur of the moment. We have been working on this. Actually, the coalition was actually looking with another group to purchase the property over 2.5 years ago. What happened was that and actually I talked with Chuck about it, the appraisal came in much lower than we thought the appraisal would. And so that was kind of what got us to this point. We absolutely have a plan for the property. We do believe that it can jumpstart the area. Part of the issue that we have right now is that there is no development on the corridor. We have been working for 4 years to get the CRA started. The community is getting tired. They want to see something. This is the best opportunity for them to see something and see it rather quickly. We've actually engaged several different partners, from architects to consultants, to take a look at what would it take, how could we do it, and how could we do it quickly. One of the suggestions has been to tear the building down. I personally am a Main Street historical person. I would like to see the building stay. The easiest would be to tear it down and redevelop the whole block at one time. I would like to see the building stay because it is the only building that is 50 plus years old in the community. There's something about the historical perspective. But what I would say is that we are actually working with and have vetted several developers. We're actually putting together a plan to make sure that, number one, we have the right branding, we have the right marketing, we have the right strategy to activate this corridor, which we know will jumpstart the rest of the corridor. We have an empty lot across the street now where the else was, that's come down, and we just cannot afford in this community to continue to have desolate pieces of property with no development. This is the opportunity to do it with the best possibility of success. This is not new. You may have just been brought into it or heard it, but I can assure you that most of the individuals here we have been in communication with, they've seen our plan, they've seen the renderings, they understand that we do understand what needs to happen to make this development work. And we are committed to doing that. And we have people who are coming alongside of us to make sure that that happens.
Okay, so my question to you would be, my concern is with the condition of the building.
Yep.
And, even if it was in a condition where the floors weren't soft and bouncy and everything was fairly okay, I know to have any kind of separation between commercial and residential, there's a lot of money that's going to go into that. So my question to you is, have you had estimates on converting this to something that's commercial downstairs and residential upstairs? I like the affordable housing component of this because we're always looking for opportunities for that.
Right.
But what I don't want to see is us, well, first of all, I think we're overpaying, which is okay if there's, a strategic opportunity, but
Right.
I question the strategic opportunity. But, if you say that you've got developers looking at this and you've got people biting at the bit to get started, have they given you any kind of indication on what the cost is going to be on this?
No, we are not at that point. And as far as the building goes, I know that Chuck and Mike Delk have both been out. They've seen the property. We do not have any estimates on what the renovation cost would be for that. So, no, I don't know about that, about the building.
Excuse me. During our due diligence period, we do plan to have an engineering firm do a conditions building assessment. So we'll have the benefit of that. We'll understand, we'll have a good idea of what costs we're looking at before we ever close on this transaction. We don't have that information yet.
My question,
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt. My question, Mr. Lane, you said we're going to demolish. Now, is there a possibility that we can save the building after the due diligence
Well, the demolition would occur on the single-family home.
on the single-family home?
The two-story structure will remain.
Okay.
Single-family home it's boarded up, it's dilapidated. It also is probably strategic for parking the commercial piece.
All right, thanks for clarifying that.
Okay, so that makes me feel a little better. If this passes today, if we approve the contract for purchase contingent on this engineering thing, and we find out it's going to be $300,000 to rebuild this building, do we have an opportunity to say, whoa, we don't want to really proceed on this?
That's what the due diligence period is intended to do. It gives us the opportunity to back out of the contract if we find things in our analysis that don't work for us in terms of our
Okay.
for the property.
I want to be supportive to the community. I mean, the CRA up there was a great first step. I just don't want to take the wrong step right off the bat. I think that, I'd like to see something happening. So I can change my mind on this. If we have a due diligence and then whatever comes back, we can take another look at it.
And I appreciate that because we've actually talked with everyone, I think, but you. So we do appreciate that, Mayor Unks.
No one's talked to me about it that I know of.
Oh, and you, yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
But that's okay.
So,
That's why I asked you to come up and explain it.
Right. So again, yeah, I think that it's a great opportunity. I think that as we look at when we did the charrette with Ford Pinellas, they actually include that entire parcel as a key piece, and they actually recommend activating that section first because they felt it's in the middle, and then the growth would go out from there.
Ms. Beckman?
Thank you. Thanks, Gloria. I was going to mention that as well, that the feedback given and discussed at that North Greenwood Rec Center planning feedback meeting was that was a key parcel along the corridor. So I have and I'm familiar with the tenant who's upstairs because I
Yes.
visit him every now and then. So we do have some resources in the city to help guide that person. Hopefully we can find some affordable rental housing with him. If we had a landlord liaison or something in Clearwater, that would help. But you said that it's the oldest building in North Greenwood at over 50 years old?
They're still standing.
Okay, because part of our comprehensive plan, I think, is to value some of our historical properties, and so I think that might be a consideration. And then
I don't know if it's old enough to be historic, but it is one of the buildings.
the
that's
oldest,
still standing.
okay. Because I know people were kind of heartbroken that the Elks was demolished.
They were past heartbroken, yes.
Okay. So this one, you're proposing to keep the bottom as a restaurant and the top as housing. If the due diligence shows that it's going to be super expensive to do the code requirements that Councilmember Albritton is mentioning, could you have the restaurant on the bottom and commercial offices or something on the top that might bring that price down? So you're not wedded to having
Yeah,
housing?
no, we're not. We're wedded to the building.
Yep.
And basically, I'm actually met every appraiser that came out to appraise the building personally. And one of the things they all agreed on is the building is structurally sound. The building was built using masonry blocks for the entire building. They said a Cat 5 hurricane could come through and that building's going to still stand. So there's nothing wrong with the building. It is the interior. And I'm not a builder, so I'm not sure about the reinforcements and the codes, and that's what we'll rely on Chuck and those for. But while the idea is that along those corridors, not just in this community, but in other African-American communities, it was always live, work, play. People always lived above where they worked. And of course, that is when we look at what Fort Pinellas is suggesting, that is the model that we see along that corridor. So this would be the first in that step. If it doesn't work out financially, then we are certainly reasonable. We would expect that we would do our best, but if not, we are not tied to making sure that that's the only option.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, and I'm glad that Councilmember Beckman brought up the loss of the Elks Club, because I know that was a devastating blow to a lot of people there in the community, and another piece of history disappearing, I don't think is a great way to kick this off. So I'm all in support of moving ahead with this, and, the most economically sound way we can.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I know that, when we spoke with Lena, we talked about, this not being, we didn't want the city to be, again, involved in maybe something that wasn't successful or the CRA hadn't done all of its due diligence. And so we've done our best to make sure that we don't want a failed project, let me assure you, because we are committed to this and we are the ones whose names are out there in front. We were the ones who, the coalition talked about the Elks needing to come down. Again, that was one of the properties I wanted to try to save, but Chuck convinced us that it was not in the best interest and it would cost too much. So we're the ones whose names are out there. We're the ones that live in the community. So if we did not think this was going to be successful, I assure you we will not be here advocating to make sure that the community that's been so marginalized, that has been so waiting for something to happen, that we want this to be successful and we want something to happen in this community. And it can't be 6 years from now. It can't be 7 years from now. It has to be now, or as close to now as possible.
And the history is important. There once was a thriving
Yep.
business community
Absolutely.
along that strip. And that can't just be a historical footnote. We need to bring that back to life.
So can I make a motion to approve agenda item 4.1?
I think Councilman Braden, did you have another question?
I just have one more question. Chuck, The purchase price is $350. I have the contract here that I've read through, but total expenditures not to exceed $402,000. What is the difference between the $350 and $402?
Survey, about $3,000. Environmental assessment, $3,500. Buildings conditions assessment, $25,000. These are conservative estimates. Demolition, $20,000. Closing costs, $1,000.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
I think I just got blamed for losing the Elks Lodge.
You did, but that's okay.
Okay. All right, before we entertain a motion, does anyone else want to speak to this item? Not, then let's have the motion. We have a motion by Councilmember Beckman.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thanks for explaining that to us, okay? All right, Director's Report.
Turn the mic on. Ann Lopez, Interim CRA Director. I have a very small director's report for you today. For our business renovation grants, we have approved 4 new grants, 3 of those being in the downtown gateway. 1 is within downtown. We have an additional 2 that are pending review. We're just waiting for some supplemental documentation. For restaurant operations, we have 3 grants that have been approved, 2 in the gateway, 1 in downtown, 1 application that is also pending additional supporting documentation. For the economic recovery grant, we have 1 application that's been approved, 1 that's in review, and 4 that we are waiting additional documentation on. CRA staff had the opportunity to meet with Prospera, which I know that they partner and work with economic development, and is working on getting them connected with some of the Hispanic Latino businesses in the downtown gateway. As for North Greenwood, all of the 25 ARPA grants have been awarded and dispersed. And they are working very diligently, all of those applicants, to get all of their programming out. And the last little bit that I have, we have, with help from the city clerk's office, have posted the application for the North Greenwood Citizens Advisory Committee, and then I will be working with public communications to get that application advertised. Those were the updates that I had for you today.
Okay, any questions or comments for the director? Yes.
Thank you, Ann. So I was hoping that, we could maybe think about some regular updates on our CRA for each month on what's going on with this, and this. And so a couple of things I had were some crime statistics with the officers that we pay for the CRA. So what's that report per month? What's the action on homeless individuals per month? Maybe transports to safe harbor, returns, things like that. Any updates on trail activation or rerouting of our trail near our CRA and taking advantage of some of those opportunities? Are we having conversations to court businesses to our CRAs? Is the CRA director working hand in hand with economic development director? What's going on there? New businesses, timeline and update, whether it's Nash Keys or the Nolan thing or all that stuff. Closed businesses, how about a why? Like for a follow-up on that Clearwater Brewery or others that leave, just an update on, okay, this month we have these that have come online or on board and these that have left, and do we follow up and have an exit kind of interview, like why did they close? Any movement on the North Ward School? What's going on with that potential? Any housing updates on container homes, tiny homes, in an effort to educate the public? And I say this because I was on an AHAC, regional AHAC meeting that I'm required to do because I sit on the AHAC. And so that's with other Affordable Housing Advisory Committee boards throughout our region and what those different communities are doing. And one of them spent, I think, a total of $4,000. And it was $2,000 to bring in kind of a 3-day over a weekend display of container homes, all decked out, that the public could come and tour and find out more about, just to, to help with that education as we move into, diversifying our housing. Same thing they did with tiny homes. And then housing updates on planned construction within our CRAs, either single lots, and what are we doing to encourage duplex, triplexes, and quads, and then the shovel dates for the 3 proposed workforce housing projects. So all that real meaty stuff that goes on within our 2 CRAs, it'd be nice to just have a check off, either no change or this is the movement that we've got for those big items. Yeah, I just think that would be helpful. I know it's a lot of work. Yeah. But it's things that people wonder about, want to see. I was also hoping that, maybe you can provide just a update on the Mercado and where we're at with that, as far as, plantings or engagement with the community for art and stuff like that, and a proposed opening date.
So last month, Kat Corcoran came and provided an update on the Mercado. Last Friday, when I drove in the gateway, they were laying sod in that area. I did see that last Friday. I will reach out to our finance department to find out where we're at on the issuing of the new request for bid.
Okay. And there are trees that are going to be planted there?
To my knowledge, yes, but I can verify
Okay.
for you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And just a quick comment, I appreciate Councilmember Beckman again for all the wonderful suggestions. And I'm happy that you brought up tiny homes, ADUs, container homes. And I wanted to thank Councilmember Teixeira as well, who a few council meetings ago brought up the fact that we should be putting container mall onto our agenda. And that is something that the folks in the community have been asking for, desirous of. I've been talking about it behind the scenes with every city manager that we've had. I went up to see Crate, the shopping mall that's very successful in Wesley Chapel. And I went there because, I was tipped off about it. And the next day I hopped in the car and drove out there, and it was a huge success. And I talked to some of the business owners there who, may have started with a food truck, for example, and now they have a location where people can come. And people can start a business there for $1,500 a month. So this is a really wonderful way to get something going quickly. Find a right location for it, and I'd like to see that move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Bunker, for the kudos, but I can't take the responsibility for that. That was a conversation that occurred about 7 years ago in the Downtown Merchants Association. At that point, I was president. One of our merchants members, Mr. Mastrosario, is the one that came up with that idea, and we've been looking at it together. It does entail a lot, like I asked the staff to look into, but I can't take responsibility for that idea. I was just passing it along.
Well, you brought it up in the meeting here to put it on the agenda. I've been working behind the scenes. I didn't put it on the agenda. So I appreciate you doing that.
All right, good teamwork. Anything else? Anything else for the meeting? Okay, we're going to adjourn this meeting. We're going to call to order the pension trustees and ask for an approval of the minutes from the meeting on June the 12th.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Any citizens to be heard regarding items not on the pension trustees' agenda? Okay, if not, let's move into new business, 4.1.
Accept the actuary's recommendations for changes to plan actuarial assumptions and methods per the experience investigation completed by Gabriel Rose Smith and Company for the 5-year period ending December 1st, 2022.
Good afternoon, trustees. Jay Ravens, Finance Director. This item is requesting approval of changes and updates to the pension plan's actuarial assumptions and methods as proposed by the plan's actuary, Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company. The plan's actuary, Pete Strong with Gabriel Roeder Smith, would like to briefly review the proposed changes with you.
Good afternoon, trustees and
Good afternoon.
city councilmen. My name is Pete Strong. I'm with Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company. We've been the actuaries for this pension plan for about the last 13 or 14 years. This is actually our third experience study. The experience studies are usually done about once every 5 years to review all the experience. And is there a clicker so I can go through? So an experience study is done about once every 5 years to review the actual experience that's happened in the plan, compare it to the assumptions we're using to value the pension plan liabilities, and then recommend any updates based on that experience relative to the assumptions that have been used. The main assumptions that we review are the investment return assumption, salary increase and inflation assumptions, because the benefits are dependent, ultimately on what people's salaries are at retirement. Rates of retirement, the probabilities of retirement at each age, service points, separation from employment, disability, and the probability of marriage and age differences for beneficiaries expected to occur at retirement. So in looking at the past 5 years, we had a total of 7,700 exposures in the plan. What an exposure is the experience of one active participant, remember, from 1 year to the next. And so we looked at 5 years, and so the average number of people in the plan is about roughly 1,600. And so 5 years of experience generated about 7,700 exposures. Now, that's sufficient to provide partial credibility, but not full credibility. In other words, we can't take what happened in the past 5 years and say, all right, that should be our assumption because it's fully credible. No, it provides partial credibility, so some weight is given to the prior assumptions that were set during the previous experience study, and some weight is given to the new experience that's emerged. The first recommendation is actually not a recommendation, it's a recommendation to stay the course on the investment return assumption. The current forward-looking expectations are now slightly higher than 6.5. The last experience study we did, they were a little bit lower than 6.5, but we recommended coming down from 7 down to 6.5. We're now have a situation where the expectation for fixed income is much higher because interest rates are much higher than they were 5 years ago. So that portion of the portfolio is expected to do better going forward than it was in the past. Equity environment is expected to have some ups and downs, but still not be significantly different than it was 5 years ago over the next 20 years. So we're recommending staying at 6.5 for the investment return assumption to be a little conservative. The inflation has been higher, much higher over the last 5 years than it was over the previous 5-year period. We're averaging around 4% per year. We had a couple of years where it was up around 8. And so the average over the last 5 years has been around 4. The current inflation assumption is 2.25. We're recommending going up to 2.4. The forward-looking estimates are around the 2.4 to 2.6 range. The Fed has been raising rates aggressively to try to get back to their target of 2.0. We're not sure, based on the forward-looking expectations, that we're going to get to 2.0. We're recommending going from 2.25 to 2.4 as the long-term inflation assumption. Salary increases. We observed salary increases, and we take out inflation to look at real salary increases. So net of inflation, which was elevated, the actual real salary increases were higher than expected over the last 5 years. We looked at it broken down between firefighters, police officers, and non-hazardous employees. And net of inflation, firefighters averaged about 4.28 versus about 3.32 had been the previous assumption. And this is, again, net of inflation. Police officers averaged about 3.67, so they were closer to being in line versus a 3.31. and non-hazardous, we're actually averaging about 4.49. I think there was a salary survey, salary study done to bring positions in line with, neighboring municipalities. And so that brought that experience much higher than what had been the case at 1.88 assumed. So what our recommendation is here is to increase the salary increases not all the way to what experience had been. So we're not talking about going all the way up to 4.49 going forward for non-hazardous. We have all the details in our full report. We just didn't want to spend the time to go through the full report because there's a lot of details in there, about a 45-page report. But we're looking at blending the assumptions that were shown there with the actual experience. So non-hazardous, we're looking at going to around a little over 3 for a forward-looking assumption, police going to about 3.5, firefighters going to about 3.8, kind of blending it. So the next things we looked at were retirement rates, separation, disability. The details of all of that experience for each group are in our appendices in the report. But overall, observed retirement rates were a little bit lower than expected for all groups. People are working a little bit longer than previously thought. Separation rates were lower than expected for firefighters, but a little higher than expected for police officers and non-hazardous employees. And then disability rates were lower across the board for all groups. So our recommendation is to modify the rates, blending past experience with the current assumption. Marriage rates, we observed male retirees had a higher probability of being married. Our current assumption is 75% across the board are married at retirement. The observed marriage rates over the last 5 years were that 76% of male retirees were married, but only 53% of female retirees were married. So I thought that was a significant enough difference to actually split that assumption. So we're recommending staying at 75% for males, but going to a 65% marriage assumption for females. For the age difference, male retirees were observed to be 1.2 years older on average than their beneficiaries. Female retirees were observed to be 0.8 years younger on average than their beneficiaries. So we're recommending changing the current age difference assumption, which is 3 years, to 2 years. So the effects of all of these proposed changes, salary increases and inflation has the biggest impact. The current required contribution for the pension plan is about $13.5 million. So the salary increases and inflation increase, by about $2.35 million. Everything else had a decreasing effect. Retirement rates, the change there brings the contribution down by about $92,000. Separation rates brings the contribution down by about $540,000. Disability rates bring it down by about $194,000, and the marriage and age difference assumption brings it down by about $51,000. So all combined, the recommended changes from the experience study bring the contribution up by about $1.43 million. So from about 13.5 to just under 15 million would be, if we changed the 2023 valuation, that would be about the impact. The impact on the 2024 valuation is yet to be determined, but it will likely be in the same general ballpark of 1.4 million. So any questions?
Any questions or comments?
So we have a compensation study that we're going to be looking at and putting into effect or making some changes early next year. How does that impact? Did you take that into account at all, or?
No, we're just looking at the last 5 years of experience, really from 12/31/18 or 12/31/17 through 12/31/22, that 5-year period of experience. So future changes would be taken into account in the next experience study, which is, they're usually done once every 5 years.
So we have to wait 5 years to kind of adjust and true up?
Well, I know that there was a salary survey done about 3 or 4 years ago, which is one of the reasons we saw the larger than expected salary increases that we observed over the last 5 years. And so that salary survey may have similar results, again, but I think that would be reflected now in the new assumptions, which, we're recommending going to higher rates going forward, which is why the contribution's going higher. And I think that will absorb, higher than expected salary increases, you know, if they end up being higher again in 5 years, then you'd have another increase 5 years from now. But
As long as we stay solvent, you know, we're putting away enough that we don't have a big catch-up in 5 years, right?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple observations and then maybe also kind of a question for Mr. Strong. So to Councilmember Beckman's point, one possibility is that we could do experience studies more often than every 5 years. I'm sure, you know, Mr. Strong will be happy to charge us for that. So that would not be a problem. All joking aside, that actually may be money very well spent because we do have the salary survey coming up. We might not want to wait 5 years for the next one just because based on what we're hearing, you know, there could be some significant adjustments that could actually really affect some of these assumptions. So that actually may be money very well spent, and that can get paid by the pension plan as it should. So that's one thing for the trustees to consider. Don't have to make that decision today, but something to think about. So that's just one comment. Another comment combined with, I think, a question for Mr. Strong is that to the trustees, Florida law requires the city to pay the normal cost of the pension plan each year. In other words, the city has to put enough money into the pension plan to make sure that we have enough money to actually fulfill the promises that the city has made to our employees and retirees. That makes sense. Clearwater, however, is in the uniquely enviable position that our pension fund is so well funded that we actually have a credit balance, meaning that we are more than 100% funded. That is a highly unusual position in my experience, at least among Florida pension plans. And so when Mr. Strong is recommending that the city increase its contributions by $2.3 million next year, and possibly, to Councilmember Beckman's point, possibly much more than that, depending on the results of the salary survey, that is real money for the council to think about, right? That's real money that comes either out of millage, it affects other city priorities, et cetera. My question for Mr. Strong will be, given that we have a credit balance, Mr. Kaufman and I have talked about giving the trustees the option of slowly drawing down that credit balance to put that toward some of these increases that we are seeing in the pension fund.
You certainly could
Wanted to see your thoughts on that.
You certainly could draw the credit balance. The credit balance is there to tap into, just to help stabilize the contribution if there is a spike. And now, whether or not these observed salary increases will remain in place, you know, it could be that 5 years from now, the next experience, or whenever the next experience study is done, that inflation has come down, you know, the salary increases have, you know, come down. That could be observed even with the salary surveys that are done. You may not see as large an increase as we saw 3 or 4 years ago from that salary survey. So, you know, there's a chance this might be a temporary increase, and that we come back down later. But you don't know that for sure until, you know, we see what future experience looks like. But yes, you certainly could tap in. There is close to $30 million in the credit balance, so that could definitely be tapped into, you know, for this $1.4 million increase that we're seeing. Also, the plan is over 108% funded, and then you mentioned having to contribute the normal cost. The normal cost is the cost of benefits earned each year, and so basically having to contribute that normal cost preserves that 108% funded status. That if you were basically taking credit for that surplus that you have in the plan and putting in less than the normal cost, you would slowly be targeting back towards 100% funded, but you'd have a smaller required contribution. Putting in the full normal cost preserves that 108% funded status, so it keeps the plan in that enviable position. It's one of the best funded plans in the state at this point. So.
If I'm doing the math right, if we take the 1.43 out of the $30 million in reserves, that's under 5%.
Right.
Which I would certainly be comfortable with because we are well-funded, and obviously this council next year or whenever can take another look at it if they need to, but that seems to be almost a prudent thing to do with everything else we have on our plate right now. That's a very healthy pension plan. Other comments, thoughts?
Agreed. I was thinking the same thing, especially with the challenges that we're facing. I think this is a good option.
Any other input? Is there anyone from the public that wants to speak to this?
No, but I also agree on that as well.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about the contribution from employees. So would an employee look at this and say, wow, you've got $30 million in a credit balance? Maybe my contribution shouldn't be quite as high?
Yeah, that is a possibility. I know that the rate of employee contributions is something that's set during the bargaining process, the collective bargaining process, as well as all pension benefits. So that's certainly something that could be considered in the bargaining process.
Yes, sir.
We've always maintained a great pension plan in Clearwater, always over 100%. I mean, as long as I've known. Been very proud of that, and I'd be fine with taking the 1 million out of that reserve, but I like being over the 100% mark. I think it shows fiscal responsibility on our part, so.
That's very much so.
And if I was an employee now, I'm not an employee in the pension plan, but I think I would want to keep putting probably as much as I could in to make sure I get a really nice retirement, but I don't know if that's a healthy thing to look at, reducing that right now. I'd maybe like to hear your input on that.
About reducing the employer or the employee contribution?
Employee.
The employee, well, the employee contribution goes towards funding the plan, goes towards funding the normal cost. So there's, regardless of what the level of the employee contribution is, their pension benefit is a defined amount. It's based on the formula in the plan. So, if they put more in, it just reduces the obligation by the city. And if the employee puts less in, then there's more obligation by the city.
That's a bargained.
Yeah, that's a bargaining item, right?
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure I want to open that can of worms right now.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion?
So the motion should be to approve the assumption changes that are recommended or make modifications.
With do we have well, I can't make a motion, so I'm not going to tell you what to say.
Well, I move to approve 4.1. Do you need it more specific?
But do we need it with the coming out of the reserve?
I think that can be decided next year because the contribution is not going to affect this year's contribution. I mean, this change is going to be reflected in the 1/1/2024 valuation for the first time, which first affects the fiscal year 25 employer contribution. So I don't think it's something that has to be done now. It's something that could be reflected next year.
Jay, do you agree with that? Okay. All right, that's fine. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
4.2.
Approve pension plan administrative expenditures for fiscal year 2024 totaling a not-to-exceed amount of $359,400.
Good afternoon, trustees. Jay Ravens, Finance Director. This request is for approval of various administrative expenditures for the pension plan for fiscal year 2024 in the total not-to-exceed amount of $359,400, which is an 8.3% decrease from the fiscal year 2023 total. This includes all administrative expenditures in support of the pension plan, other than certain professional services contracts that have been brought to the trustees separately, such as the actuary contract and money manager agreements. The net decrease this year is primarily due to a $40,000 or 30.8% projected decrease in outside attorney expenses, partially offset by a projected increase in the cost of employee physicals for new hires, along with increases in employee salary costs for administrative support. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Ravens? Anyone from the public want to speak to this? Not, do we have a motion? Oh,
Motion to
I'm
approve.
sorry, hold on. I'm sorry.
Only just to make one comment. It's not normally my style to say too much about what I'm proud of, but this is something I'm proud of. The fact that we have reduced our outside counsel expenses here by 30% is something that I am proud of. I mean, that's money that then is preserved for the pension fund, for our employees. That is a commitment that I made to this council, and I feel like it's promises made, promises kept. So I just wanted to say I'm pleased with how we did that.
Good job, thank you. All right, now the motion.
Okay, rightfully so, and I'm actually going to circle back with the salary increases. I'm going to use this as an example, but move to approve agenda item 4.2.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 4.3, please.
Approve the new hires for acceptance into the pension plan as listed.
Any questions or comments? Any public comment? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 4.3.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 4.4, please.
Approve the new hires for acceptance into the pension plan as listed.
Any questions or comments? Any public comment? We have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 4.4.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 4.5, please.
Approve the following requests of employees: Aaron Berg, Finance Department, and Charles Eric Wilson, Senior General Services Department, to vest their pension as provided.
We have a motion?
Move to approve item 4.5.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 4.6, please.
Approve the following requests of employees: Matthew Carter, General Services Department, Kelly Hemming, IT Department, and Donald Packer, Gas Department, to vest their pensions as provided.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 4.6.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 4.7, please.
Approve the following requests of Jeffrey Harris, IT, Tina Hubert, Solid Waste and Recycling, Robert McKnight, Solid Waste and Recycling, John Jack Sadowski, Public Utilities, Daniel Slaughter, Police Department, Patricia Sullivan, City Clerk's Office, and William Taggart, Police Department, to vest their pensions as provided.
Have a motion?
Move to approve agenda item 4.7.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. 4.8, please.
Approve the following request of Carol Barden, Finance Department, Laura Dan, Library Department, Joseph Hill, Solid Waste and Recycling, Vince Kirkland, Public Utilities, Todd Cunnell, Public Utilities, Martin Linderman, Solid Waste and Recycling, and Elliot Schoberg, Public Works, for a regular pension as provided.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 4.8.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you. Any other new business? Okay, let's adjourn this meeting and let's take a 5-minute break. Turn the mic on. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Clearwater City Council work session here on the 16th of October. We're going to start this meeting with Economic Development and Housing 2.1, please.
Endorse the Advantage Pinellas Housing Action Plan and Joint Forward Pinellas Countywide Planning Authority Resolution 23-25 and adopt Resolution 23-2017.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Denise Anderson, Economic Development and Housing. The resolution before you is for the endorsement of the Pinellas County Housing Action Plan. The plan represents the work of the Housing Compact Partners, of which Clearwater is an active member. Other members of the compact include St. Pete, Largo, Pinellas Park, Pinellas County, and Forward Pinellas. And I'd like to note that I made a typo in my agenda memo by identifying or stating that there were 7 municipalities. In fact, there are 4 municipalities, and I'll amend that before Thursday night. Moving on, in mid-April, Joint Resolution 23-25 was passed by both Forward Pinellas and Pinellas County, designating Forward Pinellas as the lead agency for implementation of the Housing Action Plan. And the plan was then presented at the public meeting, Pinellas, Homes for Pinellas meeting on April 28th, which some of you were able to attend. In July, both the county and Forward Pinellas formally endorsed the action plan, and Forward Pinellas has requested that as a city and a member of the compact, we endorse the action plan and Joint Resolution 23-25. So this, of course, will publicly further our commitment to continuing the work toward implementation alongside our housing compact partners. I'll mention that the plan, which is attached to your agenda, establishes 11 goals and contains 56 action items, and even more what I would refer to as sub-action items, and has a 10-year implementation schedule. There are, however, priority level actions for years 1 through 3 that are identified in a separate document not attached to your agenda. If you care to see those, I can certainly do that for Thursday night. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions or comments on this item? Yes, ma'am.
Could you share the 1 through 3, the priorities?
I certainly can. They're rather lengthy, so I'd rather not put them up on the Elmo, but I will send them over for attachment on Thursday.
Okay. And then you said there's 4 or 7 cities?
There are 4 cities. The agenda memo indicates 7 municipalities, and that's a typo.
I thought they were going to get all, like 24 signed on. Wasn't that the goal for the whole county?
For the housing compact, it's the entitlement communities. So as I said, Largo, St. Pete.
Okay. So the entitlement ones have signed on, all of them?
Yes, they did. So we brought that forward under the housing compact in July of 21. It was endorsed by all 7 by the end of February 22.
And so
all 6 to include county and Forward Pinellas.
Okay. So Whit Blanton the Forward Pinellas is going to head up this?
They are. For implementation, they now take over the primary activities.
Are they going to be with the county, or it's all Forward Pinellas?
It's joint resolution, and my read of it, which is attached to your agenda, my read of it is that they're lead agency for implementation. Of course, all the compact members will be a part of that.
Okay, great. And then they'll come out with a timeline and stuff like that. Whit'll figure out that timeline?
I presume that those action items will, in fact, have a timeline that's established. All I have right now, as I mentioned, are years 1 through 3 for priority level actions.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
It's a terrific plan, detailed. I went through the whole thing. We desperately need it. And you say the county is taking the lead?
Forward Pinellas with the county. So what's really important about this, I think that is so significant, at least from our perspective as one of the partners, is that it really requires that we look holistically at how we address affordable housing, so that, as a communicator of affordable housing, we're all speaking from the same playbook, that we try to the extent practicable, adopt the same approaches to affordable housing. Obviously, land use regulations and others will impact it. What is not reflected in the plan, of course, is the Live Local Act. So you may see some changes to the plan. I would suspect that you would see some changes evolve over time as Live Local Act is more fully understood and implemented countywide.
I did see a lot in there that seemed to coincide well with what the planning department had in mind here for the Marina District. Livable neighborhoods, walkable. So I'm pleased with all of that. I did have one question on Goal 5C, which talks about incentives for permanently affordable developments. Can you explain what shared equity home ownership developments are?
Good question. I don't know. Chuck, do you happen to know what that refers to? Did he step out? No. Do you happen to know what that means? So what Chuck is saying is recapture of the land use restriction agreement. So under our LIHTC program, as an example, there's a 50-year affordability period. I don't really know of anything that's permanently affordable. That's the longest that, well, unless it goes into the land trust, then it's a 99-year. That's, I guess, as close to permanent as we can get, but certainly I would not expect that all affordable housing goes into a land trust type restrictive covenant such as that.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Item number 3, Finance 3.1.
Ratify and confirm a not to exceed amounts of $6,227,000 for the main library restoration repair.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. My name is Tom Brown, Risk Manager with the City of Clearwater, and request to ratify and confirm the not to exceed amount of $6,227,000 for the main library restoration. As you know, we had a major loss on September 6th. The bulk of that will be going to ServPro, our restoration contractor, who responded the same day, and the other 2 items are billed separately, but it equals a total number of 6.2. Any questions?
Any questions or comments?
Council may place this on consent.
Okay. Okay, consent on this? Thank you very much. Item 4, 4.1, please.
Award a purchase order to Sunbelt Sod and Grading and Tom Sod Service for athletic field sod and installation.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Board. I'm Matthew Anderson, Assistant Director, Parks and Recreation. This item is for $170,000 for the first year with 2 one-year renewals. Apologize for that. It's for $150 for Parks and Rec and $20 for citywide. $150 for Parks will be used in any capacity needed on our 48 fields. This helps us achieve 2.3 in our objective. And if you have any questions, I will answer them now.
Any questions or comments? Speaking of this, I did speak to the city manager after I went to the, what was it called, market on Saturday, about how brown the grass is at the Sound.
Yes.
Are we in any danger of losing that, or is that just becoming seasonal now? It still looks like it's solid and in place, but it's not very green in a lot of spots.
Part of it's seasonal, and part of it is due to restrictions that we have with fertilizer use. Those will be lifted shortly, and at that point, we will be working to get
Fertilizer use was lifted October 1st, I believe, was it not?
Yes, correct. So we're back at it with that, but I can't give you specifics on that, but I can get them and get back to you as far as what our plans are to bring.
We have reclaimed water sprinkler systems in throughout most of that, or is it just?
Correct. It is all on reclaimed water. Anything that can't be brought back, this contract will actually be used for it because it is specifically for Bermuda. Okay. The various different types we use on our athletics and specialty fields.
This will be enough to cover that?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments? Consent on this? Thank you very much. 5.1, please.
Approve an agreement and purchase order with Axon Enterprise for the renewal and consolidation of Axon agreements for body-worn cameras.
Afternoon, Mayor, Council. Eric Gandy, Chief of Police. So this is an effort to do 2 things. It's to become more efficient and consolidate a number of agreements that were struck over the last 20 years with Axon, formerly Taser. So we started in this process with their conductive electricity weapons, or commonly known as a Taser, back in 2003 as a safer mechanism for officers and suspects when we have resistance. That agreement's been in place since then and renews regularly. We've also engaged in additional agreements with them for body-worn cameras, interview rooms, electronic evidence storage, and so on. what we noticed is that all these agreements were renewing at different times, and we felt that it'd be best if we could roll them all into a single agreement and come to you one time. And in conjunction with this, we're pursuing a year early an updated TASER weapons platform. Much more efficient, effective, safer, and it adds some capabilities that we haven't previously had. The new platform has some tremendous advantages in terms of telegraphing our intent and trying to get compliance before we have to utilize it. It's got a super bright 1,000 lumen light that flashes before deployment and an audible sound. So we're trying to give the person ample warning to comply before we have to utilize it. This platform also allows us to fire repetitive shots if the first are ineffective. Critically important in using these systems is accounting for the failure rate. If someone is armed with something other than a firearm, you're trying to use the TASER and you have a failure rate, but it's still a deadly weapon and they can close the distance on you, you have to have a backup plan. This allows for more flexibility. Its range is significantly longer. The existing TASERs are about 25 feet. This goes out to 40 plus feet. So a tremendous advantage there. And in terms of the financial agreement, they would waive the final year of payment on the existing TASER platform. So we've got advantages all the way around, and I think the efficiency of coming to you once with a single agreement for all of these things that we've acquired over the last 20 years is tremendously important. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Yes.
I just have a comment. I want to thank you for this item. Not only are you streamlining the process, but the cost savings are so significant, so thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to take the credit, but it's certainly my support services major that spearheaded this, and we really appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, consent on this? Yeah. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just want to say, I'm glad that we went with Axon. I think they're terrific. Looking at the price in the description of it, it seemed like a hefty price, but I'm happy to see that spread over a number of years, so it really works out well.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Consent? All right, thank you very much. 6.1, please.
Approve purchase orders to Tip Top Tree Experts and treesforyou.com for palm tree pruning on a unit basis in the annual cumulative amount of $216,000.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I'm Ali Ismailowski with Public Works. I am the right-of-way division manager. For your review and consent approval, a purchase order request for Tip Top Tree Services and Trees for You in the amount of $216,000 for palm pruning on a unit price basis for 1 year with 2 one-year renewal options. For a summary, Tip Top Tree Services and Trees for You will prune designated palms, approximately 2,000 of them. Tip Top Tree Service has 2 zones based on their size and capabilities, and Trees for You has 1 zone. Tip Top will do A and C for $146,000, and Trees for You will do Zone B for $70,000. Having 2 vendors gives us greater flexibility in the event that one decides to drop out. Funds are available in cost code 01-01312 Urban Forestry, the palm pruning, to fund the purchase order. This effort is in alignment with the Clearwater's strategic objectives to provide superior public service by maintaining our urban forest and meeting our environmental stewardship by maintaining our urban forestry. City staff have reviewed and approved this request. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Yes.
Yes.
So I came to Parks and Rec about a year ago because I had a lot of complaints on Island Estates about palm trees not being pruned, and I was told they just have to naturally kind of drop off. So what palm trees are we approving to be pruned?
So these would be like the majority, one second. oh, right here. 2,000 palm trees of different species located throughout our tourist destinations like sports complexes and the critical corridors to the beach. Cleveland Street, Gulf.
I guess the big ones like on Gulf to Bay that you don't want branch to fall off and hit some car or something, I imagine.
Yeah,
there,
Gulf
but-
to Bay and Missouri as well, sorry.
Because they told me that they weren't in the business of trimming palm trees because there were viruses that could be transmitted from, I guess, the saws from one tree to another. Maybe that was a specific type of palm tree, I'm not sure.
Sure, but with proper standards, after you're done pruning one palm, you disinfect the saw and then proceed to the next one.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Councilman Arroyo, just a little bit further. Part of the review process or the invitation to bid included a requirement that they would sanitize their equipment between each trimming of each palm. So that will be done to avoid any type of transference of viruses. I think the greater question you're asking is probably what's specific to the sable palms. And the sable palms are natural species that are to naturally shed, and this contract is not specific to do those particular trees. And we do have plenty of them throughout the city because they are a natural, this is perfect habitat for them. Most of the trees here, more or less, as Ali referred to, the ones in the right-of-way, you see them downtown Cleveland, Osceola, along the other ones, not the sable palms. We do get a lot of complaints about the sable palms because when they have the beards, they call them, they're unattractive in some respects, but that is naturally what is best for the tree, and so therefore we will not trim them just because of the protecting the tree.
Okay, good explanation, thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Consent on this? Thank you very much. 7.1, please.
Approve the annexation and initial future land use map designation of residential urban and initial zoning atlas designation of low, medium density residential for 3121 Downing Street.
Good afternoon, Dylan Prince, Plan Development. This voluntary annexation petition involves a 0.212 acre property consisting of one parcel of land occupied by a detached dwelling. The property is located on the south side of Downing Street, approximately 260 feet east of South McMullen Booth Road. The property was recently developed with a detached dwelling under Pinellas County's jurisdiction, and annexation is required in order to receive sanitary, sewer, and solid waste service from the city. The Development Review Committee is proposing that the 0.68 acres of Downing Street right-of-way, not currently within the city limits, also be annexed. This property is contiguous to existing city boundaries to the south. It is proposed that the property be assigned a future land use map designation of residential urban and a zoning atlas designation of low, medium density residential. The required sewer impact fee has been paid in full, and the property was connected to the city's closest sanitary sewer line located in the adjacent Downing Street right-of-way at the time of construction. Any questions?
Any questions or comments? Yes.
I just had a question about that right-of-way being annexed in. So that's from the county to the city?
Correct.
Okay, so the city, and it's just part of the road that the city will maintain and own and?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. 7.2, please.
Approve amendments to the Community Development Code rescinding certain previously adopted amendments determined to be null and void and initio pursuant to Florida Senate Bill 250.
Good afternoon, Lauren Matsky, Planning and Development. This ordinance was necessitated by the state legislature's passing of Senate Bill 250 in the past session, which placed restrictions on municipalities that lie within a 100-mile radius of where Hurricanes Ian or Nicole hit landfall in 2022. Senate Bill 250 states that municipalities may not propose or adopt more restrictive or burdensome amendments to their comprehensive plan or land development regulations prior to October 1st, 2024, and this was made retroactive to September 28th, 2022. So the ordinance in front of you removes those previously approved amendments that would potentially be considered to be more restrictive or burdensome, returning to the previous code language. The approach taken in determining what should be included in this ordinance is outlined in the staff report. This was presented to the Community Development Board at their special meeting on October 3rd, and they unanimously recommended approval.
Any questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. 7.3, please.
Approve the annexation, initial future land use map designation of residential low and initial zoning atlas designation of low, medium density residential for 2713 State Road 590.
Afternoon, Dillon Prince Plan Development. This voluntary annexation petition involves a 0.29-acre property consisting of one parcel of land occupied by a detached dwelling. The property is located on the southeast corner of State Road 590 and West Virginia Lane. The applicant is requesting annexation order to receive sanitary sewer and solid waste service from the city. The property is contiguous to existing city boundaries to the north and west. It is proposed that the property be assigned a future land use map designation of residential low and a zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential. The closest sanitary sewer line is located in the adjacent West Virginia Lane right-of-way. The applicant has not paid the city's sewer impact fee and assessment fees, and is aware of the additional cost to extend city services to this property. Any questions?
Questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I had a question on that, on the maps, the aerial, or that, it's not aerial map, but on the map and photos, are those dotted properties county and the solid are city? Because there's a,
Gradient, kind of. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are unincorporated Pinellas County.
the gray ones are, the dotted ones are. And then this person wants to get sanitary sewer from us, but not water. Does that happen very frequently?
It does when Pinellas County provides the water service and they provide the water in that area.
Okay, that's all. It would just seem kind of strange. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I had in my previous home in Countryside. I had Pinellas County water, even though I was a Clearwater citizen. But my current home I moved into, I have Clearwater water now, so. Anyway. Okay, anything else on this? Thank you very much. 7.4, please.
Repeal the Clearwater Comprehensive Plan and adopt a new comprehensive plan entitled Clearwater 2045.
Good afternoon, Jamie Lopko, Planning and Development. We are very excited to be here today to present Clearwater 2045, the city's new comprehensive plan. It's been a several-year journey led by our long-range planning staff with assistance from many other departments and divisions. Many of those are here today to represent their departments in case there are questions that you may have. So we've presented this to you before in several workshops, so this will cover it in a much shorter presentation. But we will go over what a comprehensive plan is, its purpose and requirements, and move into our 6 core chapters. Then I'll cover the next steps in the approval process, and then open it up for questions. I will stop a couple of times in between just in case there are questions on the chapters. So comprehensive plans, a long-range guiding document for growth and sustainability of the city. City of Clearwater has had a comprehensive plan to guide growth and preservation long before the state required it. But starting in 1986, the state did require municipal governments to have a comprehensive plan for growth management. Over time, laws and the vision of the city has changed, and updates of the comprehensive plan were warranted. So our current comprehensive plan was written in 2008, and we've had several minor updates to that plan since then. At this point, this is a complete rewrite of the plan, a complete overhaul, and changes the format of it entirely. So, Clearwater 2045 is going to include an executive summary, a main introduction, the 6 core chapters. And each of those chapters are going to contain goals, objectives, and policies. So the goals will be our high-level statements of what we want to achieve. The objectives will set our direction to achieve them. And then the policies will get into the specifics of how to achieve those objectives. So our current comprehensive plan was our starting point. That's where our jumping off point was. So we used a lot of what was in there to lead into this plan. We pulled over what we could that was still relevant, updated some of them for current trends and things that were going on in the city, and then some things that were already accomplished or were no longer relevant were removed, and then we built on that to add things that were missing. But since you've seen the plan, a couple of things have changed, so I just wanted to point those out. We did add the executive summary and the main introduction. A couple of the goals, objectives, and policies have been reworded or rearranged in the plan. We've got our maps moved around. Some of them will be within the chapter if there is a goal, objective, or policy that references that specific map. Otherwise, it'll be at the end of the chapter. We created a new future land use category table to make it easier to read and understand what they're for and what the density and intensity of those land use categories are. We've added an introduction to each of the chapters that covers a little bit of background data, planning context, and then how the plan will guide the city into the future for that chapter. And each of the chapter introductions concludes with a summary of the goals for that chapter. So we added an executive summary, and it's basically just a quick snapshot that tells you what the 6 chapters are. It has the icons that will be used and the color for each of the chapters to kind of give you a helpful leg up to figure out, okay, if it's red, it goes to mobility, or the icons, things like that. So just kind of give you a snapshot of what the goals are for that. We also added the main introduction. That's going to cover why we have this comprehensive plan, what the state requires us, and why it's there. We also show you how the plan is organized and who's going to use it and how they're going to use it. Then there's background data on our population, race, household income, as well as a brief history of Clearwater and our development patterns. And then we will close it out with the adoption process and the engagement included for the approval of the plan. All right, so we'll jump right into the 6 chapters. Quality Places is our first chapter. It's going to serve as our future land use and housing element. Provides guidance on land use development, redevelopment, housing affordability, neighborhoods, and economic development. The Quality Places chapter establishes our framework map that delineates the city's neighborhoods, corridors, activity, mixed use and neighborhood centers, and employment districts. A detailed description of these categories is in the introduction to the chapter, and the first 4 goals of this chapter cover the framework map. The remaining goals in Quality Places cover citywide topics like future land use, housing, arts and culture, and the city's causeways and view corridors. This chapter introduces expanded goals and new policies and objectives to create a density bonus for a gray water system and development, equity in access to all city-owned properties and buildings, support for tree protection and along the tree canopy, opportunities for increased housing options through accessory dwelling units or missing middle housing, and additional arts and cultural opportunities. Mobility will serve as our transportation element, provides guidance to our creation of a safe, efficient, equitable, and sustainable transportation system that serves the needs of our residents, businesses, and visitors. So the goals of mobility cover the city's transportation system, opportunities for multimodal travel, the safe and efficient operation of the Clearwater Air Park, and the logistics involved in delivery of goods and services in the city. The mobility chapter introduces guidance to cover delivery goods of city and expands on goals and objectives to create equity in the city's transportation system, to support Vision Zero, to address new and emerging technologies and modes of transportation, and to implement Greenpoint 2.0. So I'll pause at this point, see if there's anything up until this point, or to cover the first 2 chapters if there's questions.
Any questions? Okay, please continue.
Parks and public places serve as our recreation and open space elements and provides guidance on our city's parks, recreation, and open space. The goals of this chapter cover ensuring that our park facilities are available throughout the city, that we preserve natural features and resources on park property, we ensure parks and rec impact fees, are collected and expended on park systems, and that we have a new goal for the equitable design and functioning of the city's park system. In addition, the city maintains a 10-year Parks and Recreation System Master Plan that was last updated in 2013. We're right now in the process of updating this master plan, so it is anticipated that this chapter will be completely updated to account for new data and findings once that has been approved. Conservation and Coastal Management chapter will serve as our conservation and coastal management elements, provide guidance on our natural and built environment, air quality, post-disaster redevelopment, educational opportunities, and sustainability and resilience. This chapter will cover our conservation of natural resources like our beaches, dunes, protected species, and mangroves, improving our stormwater runoff to protect water quality, protection of private development and public infrastructure in flood-prone areas, monitoring and regulating development post-disaster to ensure we are not placing development at risk for future storm-related events, and providing additional educational opportunities for storm risk, flooding, and the natural environment. We also have 2 new goals in here, one that will build on existing research and ways to improve air quality, and the other relates to resiliency largely based on Greenpoint 2.0. Support services is going to serve as our public utilities elements, going to provide guidance for the provision and maintenance and the city's operational functions, including our public utilities, solid waste and recycling, and stormwater management. Goals of support services is to cover the provision and cost of the services, as well as the maintenance and expansion of infrastructure, buildings, and vehicles for public utilities and other services provided by the city. The chapter introduces guidance on the Clearwater gas system, law enforcement, emergency services, emergency management, general services, and the library system that were not in the previous version of the comprehensive plan, and then provides additional guidance on the reclaimed water and solid waste and collection and disposal. And the last chapter is plan implementation, which will serve as our intergovernmental coordination, property rights, and capital improvement elements, and provides guidance for our capital improvement program, our intergovernmental coordination of natural resources, housing, transportation, public utilities, and emergency management, as well as private property rights. The goals of the plan implementation chapter are going to cover various topics related to the city's intergovernmental coordination with other agencies, resolving conflict between the city and other agencies, our private property rights, annexation of property into the Clearwater planning area, and the city's 5-year capital improvement program. So the comprehensive plan was presented to the Community Development Board on their October 3rd meeting, and they did make a unanimous recommendation to forward the plan to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. So this is the first public hearing for this item, and the second hearing is not anticipated until January 2024. After we get a recommendation from City Council, we then have to send it off to the state for a 30-day review period, and then staff will need to address any comments that we get from the state prior to bringing it back to City Council for second reading and adoption. Any questions?
Any questions, comments?
Thank you, Jamie. I love this document. I mean, I love all this stuff, all the different chapters, and read them, and, you know, really took my time with the chapters as they were presented in the draft form over the summer, spring and summer, and I applaud your engagement with the public. What I find just a little bit frustrating is that there's differences between the final draft and these drafts. And like you said, there are some shifting of numbers and all that. So did you share it with Forward Pinellas or someone in the county for feedback before you did the final?
Yes, we are required to share it with Forward Pinellas before it comes before you, and that was done, and we received a couple comments from them, but those were taken care of. But when we submit the plan to the state, we are required to submit it to Pinellas County as well.
Okay. And is it really just a couple of comments, like a page of comments from Forward Pinellas that you could share with us?
It was just consistency things, making sure that we were following the countywide rules, and they were very minor things.
Okay. Because I just, you know, if I'm looking, and it's, you know, it's over a 200-page document. So I didn't, you know, I've got the final one here that we're looking at today, and then I have the chapters from the other, and I have not had time to go through chapter by chapter, but there are a couple things, like, for example, in the Parks and Rec, Parks and Public Places. So you've taken away, I mean, a couple, like 2.4 and 2.5 are gone, but you've got a 3 now or something, right? A little different. So you've combined some things, and some are shifted, but like, for example, on the original one, or the earlier draft, there's Parks and Public Places 2.2.4. Address the varying needs of the city's diverse population when creating and implementing parks and rec plans with special attention to the needs of those who may have significantly limited recreational alternatives. So maybe these are people in wheelchairs or something like that. But I don't see that located anywhere else. And then there was 2.3.2. I think it was now. I think this one might have been, yeah, I found it under a different one. But 2.3.3, continue to protect existing lands designated as preservation and open space on the future land use map, and designate appropriate city-owned lands as preservation or rec open space on the future land use map whenever feasible. So there's kind of a strength in language, some different changes there. You know what I mean? I think it, and it's probably too late, but it would have been helpful to have kind of a redlined version. Like, this is the final, or these are the drafts, and these are the additions or switches we've made. But why did we do some of those things?
I can tell you the one for related to preservation was moved to quality places since we cover future land use there, so that one is still in there.
Okay.
The one related to, it's going to be under the first goal, which is our equitable design, and we took that one and kind of pared it back to be 117 to ensure parks and recreation plans account for the city's diverse population and needs. So instead of making it a very long policy, we kind of pared it back.
So is it safe to say that all of the numbers that were in the draft chapters that people gave feedback on are included in here in the final? They might be in a different chapter or in a different number heading, but they're all there that people.
Some may have been combined or reworded, but we made every effort to keep them in there unless, for whatever reason, they had already been addressed or found to be no longer relevant. But I would say probably at least 97% of them are still in there in some form or fashion, whether they've moved or been adjusted.
Okay. I think there was one about permeable surfaces, all that's, because that's important, about our stormwater runoff and all that stuff. So that's all included, still included?
I'm not sure it's specific to permeable surfaces because the comp plan is more of a guiding document. We do have stormwater-related things in there and water quality things related in there, but we may have taken out the specific reference to permeable.
Why would you do that? Why would you take out specific reference to permeable?
To give us opportunities for other avenues to address water quality and stormwater runoff.
Okay. But we are encouraging and incentivizing permeable.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on this item? Okay, thank you. I'm going to recuse myself on the next 3 items. I don't think you're going to need this, Vice Mayor, but take over. I'm going to take a walk.
Item 7.5, approve the annexation for 210 Meadowlark Lane.
Afternoon, Dylan Prenz, Plan Development. This voluntary annexation petition involves a 0.54 acres of property consisting of 2 parcels of vacant land. The properties are located on the west side of Meadowlark Lane, approximately 820 feet north of Gulf de Bay Boulevard. The applicant, First Baptist Church of Clearwater, is requesting annexation in order to receive sanitary sewer and solid waste service from the city. The Development Review Committee is proposing that the 0.24 acres of Kentucky Avenue right-of-way and an unnamed alley not currently within city limits also be annexed. The properties are contiguous to existing city boundaries to the northwest and east. Sanitary and sewer and solid waste service will be provided to these properties to the city upon annexation as needed. The proposed annexation will not have an adverse effect on public facilities and their levels of service. The applicant has also submitted future land use map amendment and zoning atlas amendment applications, which will be heard in the next 2 items. Any questions?
Very good. Questions, comments? No? Anyone from the public? No? All right. Thank you.
Item 7.6, approve a future land use map amendment from the residential urban category to the institutional category for 210 Meadowlark Lane.
Good afternoon. This future land use map amendment is concurrent with the annexation I previously presented. It involves 2 parcels of vacant land totaling 0.540 acres of land on the west side of Meadowlark Lane, approximately 820 feet north of Gulf de Bay Boulevard. The applicant is requesting to amend the future land use category of the properties from residential urban to institutional. The applicant has indicated plans to develop the properties with a softball field, but no site plans have been submitted at this time. The subject parcels are bordered by the institutional future land use category to the northwest and east, as well as by the residential urban category to the south and east. At its October 3rd public hearing, the Community Development Board unanimously recommended approval of this item. Any questions?
Questions, comments? None? 7.7.
Approve zoning atlas amendment from R3 Single Family Residential District to the Institutional District for 210 Meadowlark Lane.
This is the concurrent zoning atlas amendment to the future land use map amendment. This applicant is requesting to amend the zoning atlas designation from the R3 Single Family Residential designation, which is the current Pinellas County designation, to the institutional designation. The subject parcels are bordered by the institutional zoning district to the northwest and east, as well as the R3 and low-medium density residential to the district to the south and east. At its October 3rd public hearing, the Community Development Board unanimously recommended approval of this item. Any questions?
Questions or comments? Hearing none, let's move on to public utilities. 8.1.
Approve a purchase order to America's Generators for potable and mobile generators in a not-to-exceed amount of $675,990.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Rich Gardner, Public Utilities. The item before you today is for the approval of a purchase order for the procurement of standby generators to America's Generators. We'll use these generators to provide power during power outages, during emergencies, as well as throughout the year. America's Generators was the lowest of 4 bidders, and we're asking for the not-to-exceed amount of $675,990. Note that most of this amount is to be reimbursed through FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. I'm asking for you to authorize the purchase order and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Rich, is this going to the northeast sewer plant?
It's for lift stations. 7 of them are for lift stations throughout the city, and 2 of them are for the plant. They're portable generators, so we'll use them at the plant we need them, most likely Marshall Street. But we could use them at Northeast if we.
But they're portable, you can move them around. Yes. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Consent? Thank you. 8.2, please.
Approve a purchase order to Consulting Engineering for the acoustic leak detection.
Rich Gardner, Public Utilities. The item before you today is for the approval of a purchase order for leak detection in the water and reclaimed water distribution systems to Consulting Engineering. We will use this service contract to check the system for leaks using non-destructive acoustic technology. Consulting Engineering was the lowest of 3 bidders, and we're asking for the not-to-exceed amount of $200,000 for the period of 1 year with 3 one-year renewals. I'm asking for you to authorize the purchase order and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, comments? Yes.
How long do you think it'll take? Will you need those extensions for other years, or how long will it take?
Our goal is to first year do the entire water and reclaim systems to find any leaks. And then after that, we'll do a percentage, 20 to 25% per year.
Per year?
Per year.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Consent on this? Thank you. Solid Waste 9.1, please.
Declare a list of vehicles and equipment surplus as listed.
Good afternoon, Perry Conzen, Fleet Manager. On August 4th, 2022, Council approved the vehicle replacement list for fiscal year 2023, authorizing purchase of replacement vehicles and equipment. This agenda item is requesting Council to declare surplus the vehicles and equipment detailed to be replaced per the list and authorize disposal via auction through Tampa Machinery Auction. Fleet will continue to bring forward agenda items for vehicles and equipment from the 22-23 vehicle replacement list as the replacements are deemed road ready. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, consent? Thank you. 9.2, please.
Authorize purchase orders to multiple vendors as listed for the maintenance, purchase, and rental of generators, replacement parts, and services.
Good afternoon, Peter Bardot, Assistant Director of General Services. Staff requests the ability to utilize Ring Power Cummins Mid-Florida Diesel for service, repairs, replacement parts, and load banking for B&M and public utility generators. Any questions?
Any questions? Consent? Thank you. 9.3, please.
Approve an increase to existing purchase orders for various roof repairs and replacements.
Peter Bardot, General Services. Staff is requesting the ability to piggyback an existing contract with Shaw Industries and a single source procurement to complete floor care solutions for various flooring projects throughout the city. Any questions?
Any questions? Consent? Thank you. 9.4, please.
Authorize purchase orders to Shaw Industries and Complete Floor Care Solutions for various floor repairs and replacements.
Staff is requesting the ability to piggyback existing contracts for Quality Roofing, Garland, and Advanced Roofing. The request to increase the final year of the contract is to supplement the increasing cost of a roof repair and replacement and will allow building and maintenance to move forward with projects.
Any questions? Consent? Thank you. 9.5, please.
Award a purchase order to Jet Age Fuel for the purchase of unleaded and diesel fuel.
Good afternoon, Perry Conzen, Fleet Manager. This award is for the purchase of unleaded gas and undyed diesel fuel for delivery to the city's fuel facility located at 1701 North Hercules Avenue, and for the purchase of red-dyed diesel for delivery to the city's fixed and mobile generators at various locations within the city.
Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Perry. I had a couple questions. So I had a question about your future fiscal year budgets will include requests for funding of $3,200 for fiscal year, no, $3,200,000 for each fiscal year 25, 26, 27. So how did you arrive at that same $3,200,000 per year for unleaded and diesel fuel for the next 4 years? To me, it seems like it would be going up.
Well, it's reaching out there. Year by year, we go by OPIS, the Oil Price Information Service, and that's based off the rack price on a daily thing. But we would forecast that might go up, and we'd have to come back.
Okay, I was hoping it might come down if we get our EVs and things like that. We
Well-
wouldn't be buying diesel fuel and,
The diesel's already gone down. We're using less diesel now than we have before with the CNG. And with the, if we move forward with the electrification and the hybrid, hopefully that'll bring it down enough, depending on how much we do in the upcoming years with that green print,
okay,
green fleet.
okay. Hopefully it'll come down. Okay,
Well, in the market, like I had said before in presentations in the past, there's a lot of turmoil going on in now the fuel market and also the equipment market, the manufacturers and vendors, and now it's migrating over to the parts availability also.
thank you.
Any other questions? Consent? Thank you. 9.6, please.
Approve an increase to purchase order with mayor for services provided under the lease agreement.
Good afternoon, Tom Wyke, Building and Maintenance. Staff requests renewal of the mayor lease agreement for a second one-year term. The mayor annual lease agreement is a full maintenance agreement that covers installation, repair and maintenance, inspections, and 24/7 monitoring for all mayor company-owned security and fire alarm systems, as well as 24/7 monitoring for city-owned systems. Currently, there are 87 facilities being monitored by mayor for fire and security. Staff recommends approval.
Any questions? Consent? Thank you. City Attorney, 10.1.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. So, Mayor, as the council is aware, I've been directed, at least by the majority, to create a ballot question for the March 2024 election. And that ballot question will ask two things. First, it will ask whether the voters of Clearwater would like to create a runoff system of elections, which would replace our current plurality system. Second, it will ask about moving the dates of our elections. As the council is aware, our current elections take place in March of even-numbered years. However, if a runoff system is to be created, then the supervisor of elections has, if I understand correctly, advised us that she would not have the staffing or logistics support in order to create a runoff system which would have, say, runoff elections in April, May, or June of even-numbered years. And therefore, if the desire is to create a runoff system in Clearwater, it must be the case that the dates of our elections move in order to coincide with that. So I have drafted language that is attached to the agenda item. A few things I will point out publicly, just kind of highlights. First, there are a couple typos and formatting issues. Don't worry about that stuff. That's going to get fixed. There's a couple of minor things. That's not stuff to worry about. I can fix all of that in time for the Wednesday council agenda. But the substantive points of this are where I'm going to really need some feedback from council. So, of course, the first question is going to be, does the council still want to move forward with creating a runoff system in Clearwater? And second, if that is the case, then what does the council think about the ballot language? So, under Florida law, the ballot title cannot exceed 15 words, and the explanatory statement cannot exceed 75 words. It's hard when you're making multiple changes like this to fit all of that into 75 words. The number of words we have right now in the explanatory statement is 75. Now, it can be changed, so the council, by all means, can make those changes. So please give that direction today, or if you're not prepared to do that today, then we can do that on Wednesday if necessary. But I would prefer to have that conversation today. It's a lot easier if we need to make changes. But again, keep in mind we are at 75 words right now, and so any words you'd like to add will have to be words that we remove in order to fit that in there. So those are a couple things I wanted to get feedback from council on. A few things to point out as far as highlights in the proposed ballot language and in the proposed ordinance. This will be asked, if council approves it, on the March 2024 ballot in conjunction with Clearwater's normal March 2024 elections. If the council advances this question to the ballot and if voters approve it in March of 2024, it will go into effect in 2026. This means a few things, right? So one thing it means is that it has no direct impact on our March 2024 elections. It also has no impact on when people take office as a result of the March 2024 elections. But it will have impacts later on that everyone needs to understand. Specifically, we have 2 council members whose terms expire in office in March of 2026 currently. But if voters approve a runoff system and move the dates of our elections, those council seats will need to be extended because otherwise we'd have critical vacancies in office for months. And so part of what I have drafted in here is to extend those terms in office from March of 2026, when those terms would normally end, until November of 2026, which would be potentially a runoff election if one is required. So that's a feature that I wanted to point out. I believe that will be necessary in order to create this system. The other feature to point out that affects terms in office will be that anyone who's elected or reelected in March of 2024 will have a different term in office, because normally that term would run from March of 24 to March of 28. However, because if this system passes, there will not be an election in March of 2028, there must be a change in that term in office for anyone who's elected or reelected in March of 2024. And so those council members, whether newly elected or reelected, will have their terms in office last until November of 2028, which is necessary, again, in order to create alignment. Once all of this gets passed, if that's what happens, then anyone who's elected for the first time in 2026 or reelected in 2026 and from then on will have a 4-year term in office starting in November of 2026. But during that changeover period, we have to make sure we don't have critical vacancies on council. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions? Yes, sir.
Not so much a question. I'm not in favor of runoffs, but I am in favor of giving you more than 75 words for the ballot question. So if that's something we can approve today, does that go to every ballot question that we put on in the future?
It does. That is a state law requirement. Part of it is because the supervisors of elections, need to arrange for printing and things like that. But the bigger issue that the legislature was trying to deal with was the ballot fatigue problem. And so when you have long ballots with very long explanatory statements, it gets difficult. The best practice, I think, for a lot of city attorneys, and one that I followed with Gotham and one that I'm following here, is that when it's a complex question like this that has more details than what you can fit in 75 words, it's always good to refer back to the ordinance, because that way people can at least look up the ordinance number and read all of those details, things like the qualifying dates, things like commencement in office, expiration of office, will never fit all of that in 75 words. And so for a question like this, that's why I put that language in the ballot, so that anyone who's at least seeing the ballot question can do further research if they want to, because 75 words is a harsh limit when it comes to complicated questions like these.
So I have not changed my stance. I stand by what I said in the last work session. I did want to see if I could replace the word no, because I think that negatives confuse the voters. However, after about 45 minutes of wordsmithing myself, I was unsuccessful. So it is a very difficult job to do that. So I think at this point, I do approve the language for this question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I like what it says, and I understand it's difficult to get everything in 75 words, but so the way that I'm reading this, if no candidate receives more than 50% of the vote in a municipal election, modifying the dates for candidate, the runoff will be, it would just be the top two, right?
That is correct. The two candidates receiving the greatest number of votes will run against each other in runoff.
Anything further? Mr. Albritton?
I'm not getting that, but
Thank you. So I respect the vote of the council, the 3-2 vote, to put this on the ballot. So I'm not going to beat a dead horse, and I'm not here to convince my peers to reconsider. I don't think I'm going to be changing anyone's mind. However, I want to take this opportunity to ask a few clarifying questions because, when this becomes a ballot initiative, the city is not allowed to educate the public about this ballot initiative and what it means and the nuance and consequences. And so any kind of communication with voters is probably going to be done by PACs or other entities that want it to go a certain way. And so I'd like to clarify, what is the function of the whereas statements on the first page?
May I? Okay. So a couple things. So as far as the voter education piece, just for some context, it was very common in years past for cities, when putting information on the ballot, or counties, when putting things out there, to send mailers, advertisements, things like that, to educate voters. Cities and counties have always been prohibited in spending public funds to engage in express advocacy for or against ballot questions. However, it has been a very common and longstanding practice in Florida to educate voters by at least giving factual information about what's going on. More recently, however, the legislature has prohibited the use of public funds for any sort of voter education or voter information as it pertains to ballot questions. I won't comment on the policy wisdom of that, but to say that that is currently the law. So I would not go so far as to say that we are prohibited from educating voters, but it is true that we can no longer spend public funds on any sort of voter outreach. And so those abilities of the city are now restricted to either putting factual information on the website, which doesn't cost us anything, and which stops short of any express advocacy one way or the other. And of course, individual council members are always free to express your First Amendment rights, both here on the dais and of course when you're out in public, to share your views that way. But there's no doubt that we are limited as far as what we can spend public funds on and our involvement in terms of voter education, voter outreach, et cetera. And that is a challenge that is going to face local governments for a wide range of ballot questions, not just limiting to Clearwater or this one. So I just kind of wanted to point that out as a prefatory remark. As far as the whereas clauses, I think it's always helpful in any ordinance to put whereas clauses to explain what the background is. As I said, the ballot question itself is going to refer voters back to the ordinance. So if voters want to know why this is coming forward, they can read about why it's coming forward. If there are specific whereas clauses that the council either disagrees with or does not find are factual, things you don't like, we can take them out, and that's the feedback that I'm certainly would be looking for. There are also things that can be added, and so if there are other whereas clauses you'd like to put in there, you can. But when I'm drafting this, I'm trying to do it as neutrally as possible while accomplishing the objective of explaining to voters why the council has chosen to put this on the ballot. So in other words, I don't want to take sides on necessarily what voters should do, but on the assumption that council wants to move it forward, it is going to be drafted in a way that supports what the council has chosen to do, just like other ordinances, right? Like other ordinances are also going to have whereas clauses that explain why we did it. So for example, bread and roses, right? When that came forward to the council, that was a controversial item, but there were a bunch of whereas clauses explaining why the council was moving forward with that. And that helps people understand, both in the media and in the public, some of the thought process behind it. So that's the logic behind it. It has no legal effect at all, but it's more just background information, so that way either if voters or if the media want to get a sense of what the council's thought process is, they can do that. But by all means, it's not fixed, so the council certainly can give me direction to either take stuff out or to add new ones.
Thank you. So I had a concern about the whereas the city of Clearwater is the most populous city in the Gulf Coast region that allows a candidate to take office without receiving a majority of the votes cast in any election. And that may be true, but do we not include, we didn't take the time to have an expert come and present information or data, but of those other cities, do they have strong mayors? Do they have districts? There's no context there with that statement. So I think that's lacking in a full picture. So either we take it out, or I think we need to put more detail in there. The other one I had was about ranked choice voting. I don't know that that's really necessary because the state doesn't allow us to even consider it. I guess we could, what was it, Sarasota passed it maybe, and it just sits there. But I don't see why that's there to kind of confuse things, because it's not an option for us with state law right now.
That is correct. As to the second issue, I think the only reference to ranked choice is in fact to say that it is prohibited. I think the reason that's in there, which again, this is why we're having the conversation, and so council can excise it if you so choose, but I do think it's helpful for voters to understand why we're not going to a ranked choice voting system, which is the fact that it is prohibited. That may in fact be a system, candidly, that might actually have consensus support among the council because it may actually create some of the best of both worlds because it creates a runoff, but it does it without the time and expense of a second election. If that system were available, I would not be surprised right now if the council was directing me to put a ballot question creating ranked choice voting, but since it is not an option that's allowed, that whereas clause is in there just to explain to voters who might be asking you, hey, why isn't the city going to ranked choice voting? And the answer is it's illegal in Florida. That's as simple as that.
So you think it's best to keep it there?
I do, just because I think it's because I know that question comes up a fair amount. There's a lot of people, interestingly enough, on both sides of the aisle who ask that question about ranked choice voting, because it tends to appeal to people across political spectrums, because it creates a runoff system, but it's an instant runoff system. And I'm not saying that I support or oppose it, but I'm just saying it's something that I know that and I think council members have heard feedback probably from diverse groups who actually support that system. And if you get questions from voters as to, well, hey, if you believe in runoffs, why aren't we doing this ranked choice voting? And now the answer is pretty straightforward, which is simply that's not an option available to us under Florida law.
Right. And we did have an expert come in. The whereas the Clearwater City Council expects to increase voter participation and reduce costs for the city by aligning its election schedule with state and federal elections. But we have data that shows that the August election we don't have as much participation generally in August elections as we do in March. And so I don't understand why that's there. I mean, and we haven't discussed at all the costs of running a March election versus an August and then turn around for a November election.
I think that was clearly articulated in Julie Marcus's number 2 person's email to me. You did not see that? It was copied.
I didn't get it. I don't think I got it.
It was clearly articulated that we'll have a better turnout.
But the data shows that we have less turnout in August than March, generally.
Not if we line it up with the presidential and everything else. Their data shows that we have more.
But we had, so in, let's see. In March of 2020, the total turnout for the county was 36.77 in March. In August of 2020, the total turnout was 31.9%. In March of 22, the total county turnout was 28%, non-presidential primary year. In August of 22, the total turnout was 31.77. So, you know, it's generally less than 5 percentage points.
Are you talking county and city?
I'm-
March is just city.
I'm talking March. The March of 2020 election, when I was elected, it was 36.77% turnout.
Yeah,
And
but
that was
that's-
a presidential.
But
And
that's
then in
city.
August,
That's city turnout, not county turnout.
right, okay, I'm sorry, for city. Yep. And then in August, it was 31, so it was 5% less in that year.
Yeah, but the August is a county turnout.
The August is those runoffs, it's a primary.
Yeah,
For
but
those
it's
cities.
countywide, not citywide. You got two different things.
No, I don't. I have a county number of 31.9% in August of 20, and I have a city number of 36.7 in March of 20.
We can get that clarified by Thursday night.
But anyway, I mean, I think that, can we add some, I just don't feel comfortable with the whereas the city council expects to increase voter participation and reduce costs. I don't think we have the data to support that.
Well, the data, I mean, she definitely said it would reduce costs. I mean, there's no doubt about that. That was clear in the email I got, that again was shared with everyone. I'm not sure why you didn't get it, but we can resend it. They can resend it back out.
So isn't it about $10,000 to run an election for the city? And then we'd have to
I don't know that exact cost.
run 2, August and November?
So to run, next year's election is a perfect example of a countywide election. So our election will coincide the presidential preference primary. To do a one-card election, it's approximately $10,000. If we have referendum questions and it exceeds the 1 page, 2 pages, or a 2-card ballot, you're looking at $25,000. If we were to do a standalone election, it's $166,000 approximately.
So significantly less.
A standalone election in March?
A standalone election, whether November or March, will be about $166,000.
Okay, can we include any whereases about the cost for candidates? Whereas moving to a primary or to a majority election will most likely increase the cost to candidates?
We can, it just seems like, but it seems like a strange thing to include.
I am not in favor of that.
In an ordinance that is putting the issue before voters. I mean, so yes, we can put anything in there the council would like, but since that would likely be an argument against the substantive proposal, it may be, unusual to put that in the ordinance itself. I mean, we could, look, I mean, honestly, a lot of good arguments can be made on both sides of this, and I think that ultimately, if this plays out the way I expect it will, the council will probably put a question on the ballot, and ultimately voters will
Yep,
have to
that's fine.
decide, where they're at.
But again, it's to let people go back and, after the 75 words, if they want to go back and really look at what was the rationale, what did the council look at, what are the details, and whereas we acknowledge that most likely the cost to candidates will increase, isn't that being transparent? I mean,
I think we need to see data on that. Yeah, maybe you'll have to run an extra campaign, and that'll cost money, yes, but how much and how many people's involved, I just don't think that belongs on this.
I agree, I'm uncomfortable with that. First, I don't think it's I, as a voter, would not care if it's easier or harder when I'm thinking of this ballot, but that is a statement that cannot be proven. For example, if I would be a candidate in 2026, I would budget for that. It's not necessarily more expensive, and it's an even playing field because everyone's facing that same circumstance. So instead of spending, let's say, whatever, $1,000 over the course of 3 months, there's another race, you would budget accordingly. So that statement, to me, would be hard to prove. And I don't think it should be included in this whereas, I don't.
okay, well, maybe I can ask, people, elected officials in St. Pete who have to have, who participate in runoffs, what the average cost of their campaigns are. So that's all public record. But I think, I'm just asking about, being fully transparent about what the consequences are, what the results of it are. And again, I think I get concerned about where voters who are doing their research will get their information. And having it from the city in a whereas statement that we acknowledge this, and this, these are the results, or the factors that we've considered and acknowledged as we put this on the ballot, that this can at least be kind of an official document without PAC skews and all that stuff.
Well, in my history, I don't think the average person even looks at something like this. They're going to hear from the media, they're going to hear from people that go out and for or against or proponents either way. And there'll probably be meetings and, neighborhood meetings, there'll probably be other meetings. I don't know anybody reads this, to be honest with you, the people who talk to me, especially up where I live, they're just not engaged. And they're going to listen to what the media says about it, and they're going to listen to other people, word of mouth, and, what do you think about this? I'll probably get 100 text messages when the ballot comes out asking my opinion. That happens all the time. Who do I vote for judge? What do you think about this? I have no idea what's going on with this. And that's just how engaged people are, or they're not. And I don't think we should put anything else in there. I'm fine with these whereases. I'm fine with the way this is written as of now. I think I'm going to look at it a little more closely before Thursday night. It's very difficult to write a question in 75 words. But on the flip side, if you put 150 words in there, you're confusing people. And that's the problem with that. And I think that's probably why you have these limitations by the legislature. But anyway, Mr. Albertin, I'm sorry, you want to speak?
Yeah, I'm going back to my original statement. I see that on page 4, the top paragraph, you have election, then 2 candidates for that seat that receive the highest number of votes in a regular city election shall run against each other in a runoff. But under the wording on the ballot, I don't see that. So I'm going to propose a change. So on the fourth line, it says federal primary elections creating a runoff, and then you could put the top 2 candidates for each seat in which no candidate receives more than 50% of the vote in a municipal election. Just take out election after runoff and put in of the top 2 candidates, and you'll be at 73 words.
That's the ordinance language. This is the one that goes on the ballot.
Oh.
Yeah. That's different. This is the ballot question.
We're looking
So
at the
it says
page,
yes
bottom
or
of
no.
page 5, right?
Yep.
Okay, never mind.
It goes to show just how tough it is, right? Because I agree entirely with Councilmember Albritton. I think that's a much better way to say it, but it gets hard, as Councilmember Teixeira pointed out, when you start fitting it into 75 words. So if we look at the, if we look at the question as drafted, let's say, so the first line of it says, shall the City of Clearwater Charter be amended to require a runoff election? Let's say we were to add the words to require a runoff election, among the two candidates receiving the greatest, number of votes, but less than 50% or something like that. It's going to be tough to fit that within our 75 words because we're already at 75. But I do agree entirely with Councilmember Albritton's point that I think that's a better way to phrase it. But it's not easy to fit it all within 75 words. But I have no pride of ownership, so happy to make changes if council has a better way to draft it.
So I'm sorry, I was looking at the ordinance because it didn't make any sense to me on just the ordinance language. But, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think to the mayor's point, my experience with this has been, and I'd say just for background, I was involved with representing the clerks of court back in 2018 when Amendment 10 was put on the Florida Constitution ballot, and that went before the Constitution Revision Commission, lots of wordsmithing there. Ultimately, voters approved it by supermajority, which is required under Florida law. And the reason I say all this is that my experience with ballot questions is that for a large percentage of voters, the information that they get out of this is going to be derived from the ballot itself, as well as the mayor pointed out, from the media, from other friends, sources like that. I don't have statistics, to tell you one way or the other, but I do agree with the mayor that I think that my sense is very few people actually go back and read a lot of this language. That said, it goes both ways. So, the argument could be that, well, very few people are going to read it anyway, so should we have any of this? So that's completely why we're having the conversation in public, and so that way council can give direction on what you'd like to see or not see in those clauses.
Vice Mayor?
I just wanted to go back to my original point that if there is a better way to phrase it, I'm happy to give you 90 to 100 words if that makes it, more understandable to the public and more clear.
It would. In fact, that would, I think, perhaps accomplish some goals, which would be that it would both make it more understandable for the public and undoubtedly result in the ballot language being challenged because it's of an illegal length, which would conveniently strike the ballot question. And so if someone does not support the ballot question in the first place, that outcome might not be so bad.
Well, just, don't go nuts. Don't write Moby Dick. 90 to 100, fine.
Can't do it though, right?
We cannot.
So one question I have, okay, is instead of 50%, is it more clear to some people, I guess it's more clear with 50%, but with the word majority vote, the two words as opposed to 50%, fit better, or do you like 50% better? Do you think that's clear to the average person maybe looking at it and not maybe understanding what majority vote means?
I think 50% is clear. I actually asked a few people this weekend that very question, what does that mean? And 50% was clearer to some people rather than majority. Some of the questions that came back was, well, what do you mean by majority?
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
But in terms of the better language and being specific, I think, if we're really careful with how we communicate on our website and keep it very objective so that the voters are educated, and then really make an effort to include the right language there, because then we won't have a limit on the language, on the wording.
That is correct, and just to Councilmember Teixeira's point, so things like the whereas clauses typically will not be mentioned on the website. We'll probably have a link to the actual ordinance so people can see it that way if they want to, but the actual summary that we would likely put on our website would be extremely, there would be no editorial, no interpretive. It would be about as cut and dry as it gets without any editorial flush to it.
Neither pro nor con.
Correct, neither pro nor
Very
con.
benign.
It would be extremely right. It's going to be extremely straightforward. It'll say, these are the bullet points. This is actually what is accomplished if you vote yes, and then if you vote no, nothing changes. So it's going to be. We'll work with the clerk and with public communications on how that can be phrased. But given the limitations of Florida law, we do have to be very careful in how we phrase that, whereas this document, the ordinance, is not so restricted as far as what sentiment council would like to express or not express.
We could also put this in the newsletter that goes out with the bills, correct? I mean,
I'm gonna have to think about that one.
Sending that out,
You know, the
then we're-
clerk and I are kind of shaking our heads at each other. I'm not so sure that we could, given some of the statutory restrictions that are out there now. I doubt that we actually could do that now, even though previously that would be very commonly done.
Okay, because I guess we are using public money, even though we send it out we send that out either way, but I understand that, okay. Makes sense. All right, anything else on this for right now? Okay, let's move on to city manager verbal reports. Thank you.
Council, item 11.1 is being continued to the next meeting.
Okay, 11.2, please.
Provide direction on the proposed nonprofit charitable funding policy.
Mayor and Council, so this is a follow-up item. If you recall, back in November of 2022, so last November, we had a discussion regarding how we would handle the gas sponsorships. And during that conversation, Council approved a list that the gas company will continue to fund. They approved a list that will no longer be funded, and they approved a list that would be funded from a council-approved list, but not by gas. So what we are here today, this item is to talk about that list. So the list of sponsorships that council approved to be funded, but not by gas. So during our budget this year, it was expressed that council would like a policy to how we would going forward handle funding sponsorships. We agreed on a funding amount, but now what's left is to agree on how. So we did discuss this very briefly during the budget, where this policy was delivered to all of council, but we did not get council direction at that time. And so that's what we're looking for today, is direction. Is this a policy that council would like to approve? Do you need changes to it? Do you want to leave it as is and that list just stays reoccurring? And we can handle the funding that way. So the council has a lot of options here. I know sometimes that makes it harder when you have a lot of options, but that's what we're looking for with this item, is we need direction.
Direction, please, yes.
I actually have a question first. And please clarify for me. So this is a process that begins between September and December, and then the grant's awarded in January, correct? Usually.
Well, so our funding, because it's a budget year, it'd be based on our fiscal year for the budget, which starts 10/1, so October.
And then awarded usually in January?
So what this is saying is that we would have an application process, and we would pick who would be funded for the year, but they come in at different times based on what it is that they're doing. So for example, if there's a gala, right? I mean, the gala is not going to be funded at the same time because they happen throughout the year. But what we're talking about in January would be the review period, to where we would ask them to fill out an additional application, because currently they send forward, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for sponsorships. This is what it's going to go to. And we respond to that if we're going to support them or not. So this would be an additional application if that's what council chooses, and then staff would review to determine if they're eligible for funding, and then go from there.
Yeah, since the beginning of when this happened, I felt so bad that they were the collateral damage to all these changes. I mean, when I review the list of these organizations, whether it's Big Brothers, NAACP, Pinellas Education, YMCA, these are like incredible, great community partners, and they have contributed so much to our community. And I just feel like they took the brunt of all this in all the changes and questions about how to proceed, and I really don't want to make it harder for them. And then my next question is, if we do have an application process, what are the criteria we're looking for? What do we value, and what do we weigh them at? Like, I have no idea. How do we evaluate it? I mean, are we comfortable just having the staff do it? Because these organizations accomplish many different things for different populations, and so how do we grade them?
Okay, when I was on DDV years ago, that was our job, is to give out money. And the way we did it, I liked, because we would, for the following year, fiscal year, we would have a date, I think it was usually May, and when everything was due, all the applications were due in, and that gave us several months to go through and parse it and figure out what we were going to support and what not to support, and then put a budget together for the following year for that. I don't have a problem doing that, but I think I think we need time to do it, and we need to tell them a year ahead of time. Next year, like if we're talking of this year, like let's say 24, we'd be taking in applications in 24 for funding in 25. Almost I guess we could push it toward maybe the end of the year where, because our fiscal year starts October 1st. Whatever makes sense, but I thought that was the best way to do it when we were doing it. Everybody had a chance to decide in what order and the best ones of all the applications in.
Council members, the proposed policy that's attached to the agenda item included criteria. So you would have to be tax exempt, nonprofit, provide evidence of insurance, pretty similar to our application process for CDBG and what we have right now for the ARPA grants. So trying to streamline that process, and the objective really is, instead of having these one-offs throughout the year, is to have these organizations come in at one time, submit an application. How that application is reviewed, that could be either by staff, or that can be a committee of some sort that whatever council decides and directs staff to proceed with. But the idea really is to streamline that process, and then that way everybody's going in at the same time, submitting an application, and then they receive their allocations in that format, as opposed to the current practice has been whenever they need the funding, they submit a request. So it's really a one-off. It's never submitted to council, at least in its entirety. So now you would have an established budget, an established process. The city of Jacksonville, for instance, they have a competitive process. I think Tampa also has a competitive process, so it's in that format.
Anything else on this? Yes.
I appreciate that, Rosemary. I think that's most fair, is to have it advertised, promoted. What are the parameters? What are we judging it on? Have an evaluation committee to rank and review it. You have limits that you've set, which is good. And I think, the collateral damage to these, changes, it's just the effects of looking out for gas ratepayers and gas company operations, which we sit on that oversight board as well, and to bring it more in alignment, that we're not outliers in having, millions of dollars go out the door with sponsorships. So that's not really fair to our gas customers. So this brings it more into alignment. I think it's a lot more transparent and fair to all those good partners in our community. But I would think that it would take you time to put together some kind of a form and process and promote it, and maybe promote it during the summer, and then, they would apply mid or late summer and be ready for our final budget meetings at the end of the summer, and it would go into effect in October of 25.
Ideally, that's the plan really is to have it, the application period in the summer, and then with council presentations, probably in December, so that way it's awarded. So council would actually have an opportunity to review these applications. Instead of the one-offs, you would view them all at one.
Yeah.
And just for perspective, other municipalities in the area don't necessarily use general funds for sponsorships anymore. So the practice really, like Largo, they really, they use more CDBG funding and their ARPA funding for those types of purposes. The city of Oldsmar does $7,200 for sponsorships of nonprofits. Dunedin has the most at $140,000. Pinellas Park has has budgeted over 400,000, but that includes like Pinellas Hope, their PIM, so that their, what they call contributions for nonprofits includes what we normally give our annual contributions.
Which is about 300,000, right?
Okay, anything else on this item?
Mayor, can I?
Yes. Did you have something?
Oh, I just wanted to say, I'm happy with all of the necessary criteria for the awards or grants. It is a shame that we only have $70,000 though, and when we're giving them to a major charity that it would be peanuts to. I remember back to the folks who were quite upset with the ARPA funding distribution, where they had programs to help people get back into society after coming out of jail, or the health services there. Some of these smaller organizations might benefit more than giving it to conglomerate. That's all I had to say.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we leave it as is and work for the new process for next budget year. Is that what I'm hearing?
Sounds good to me.
Do you have direction, Jen?
So the funding, I just want to make clear that the funding that was shared with us from last year holds the same, is that correct? So we have, this is the fiscal year 23 council sponsorship list, approved 11/3/22, just goes forward without any resubmission of anything. So we have, it starts with $5,000 for an annual Value Me luncheon, $4,000 for silver sponsor of Big Brothers Big Sisters, Chi-Chi Charity Classic sponsor, annual diversity luncheon sponsorship. Now, they've got the annual, I think we had an annual benefit breakfast. Was there something about the MLK Center on here, which we're not doing anymore? I forget. Platinum sponsorship, that was Willa Carson, let's see. Oh, yeah, Clearwater, Martin Luther King Jr. Neighborhood on Douglas, City Council table sponsorship of 1,000. That's not even open anymore, correct? MLK Center isn't even operating anymore?
That is correct.
So we've got $1,000 there. I mean, so we had, in the proposal, we have $5,000 limit, and on one of these, we have Pinellas County Sheriff's Police Athletic League, the Pinellas Education Foundation has $24,000. So we're staying with all of these from last year, just continue on without anybody explaining what the funding's for?
So as these have been done previously, what they do is they send out a call for sponsorships. And so we will get all of their materials. You guys are getting them now. I mean, you'll see the materials that are coming in now that's in your council mail, where they're asking for sponsorship. So it's not that we don't know what it's for. We get the call for a sponsorship. It says this is what the different levels will get you, and or what events you are sponsoring if you do so. But yes, the item, if that's what council decides Thursday, then we would continue to fund these at these amounts. Now, we did increase the budget to $70,000 because we know that everything is going up a little bit, and so, some of these things might have increased. And so staff would review that to see if it's in line in terms of, with what we have budgeted. But yes, if council's decision today is that we're gonna implement this policy as written to go forward for next year, we would advertise it in the summer for the following year. You guys would then have the opportunity to decide if you want to change the funding for this in terms of the dollar amount in next year's budget. But this year, it would move forward with those that are on this list at these amounts.
Okay. I would like at some point, because our job here is to watch the budget, I would like at some point, and I'm okay if it's easier to have this go forward, the fiscal year 23 council sponsorship list into 24, although, again, that Martin Luther King Center, $1,000 wouldn't be there. But if we could have, maybe a paragraph summary about what those funds are used for, that'd be really nice.
And we did that during the gas one, when we had that conversation, we provided, and you have a little bit of a statement in terms of what, they are here, in terms of what it's going for. We can give you, like I said, you also get that, most of these are mailed out, so you get it in the council mail. If you want us to do additional summations for that as they come in, we can certainly do that.
Okay. I don't know what Charity Works Inc. is. I don't know what that is. There's some of them I don't know what they are. That's all. Thanks. I can follow up and learn more about some of those.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple observations on this. I think the questions before the council, and maybe they don't have to be fully answered today, but the questions to be thinking about are questions over how much money total you want to allocate to different organizations throughout the year, and what process do you want that to look like as far as how those monies are allocated. Whether that means a process by which council goes one by one and selects that way, or whether that means a process that's led by staff, I think is okay. But I think there has to be some process for our partners' benefit, right? So that all these organizations know that they're not just taking a stab in the dark. They have to know what it looks like on our end in order by how they're going to be evaluated, but also how much money they're eligible for. So that, I think, is really the question. How much money do you want to give and total, and what process do you want it to look like? As far as the differentiation between the gas system funds and the city funds, as I understand it, historically, the gas company has been used to sponsor a wide range of things. However, shortly after I joined the city, I recall that the Tampa Bay Times had an article pointing out that the city of Clearwater's gas company sponsors a lot more than similar public utilities throughout the state. So that, I believe, triggered the conversation as to whether that should be revisited. I will say that from my perspective, I don't have any legal problem with the gas company sponsoring the things that they have in the past or the things that they are today. I will say that the gas company, because they charge user fees, they do have to ensure that their spending is in some way advancing the mission of the gas company. But as long as it's rationally related to marketing, I'm more or less okay, at least from a legal perspective, with them spending their funds. Where I've started to get a little bit uncomfortable is if they start sponsoring events that are outside of our gas service area. I think that is a little bit more of a stretch as to whether that's a reasonable use of gas customer funds. But as long as it's an event that's taking place within our gas service area, I will say that for my part, I don't have any legal heartburn over it. It is revenue neutral for the city, whether we choose to give $60,000 from the gas company, or you cut that money out, which then increases the gas company's dividend to the general fund by $60,000, and then you allocate that same $60,000 to the organizations, it's really revenue neutral for the city. But I do think that when it comes to the money that's actually with the gas company before it is allocated as a dividend, we do have to be mindful that it has to, in some way, advance the mission or marketing system of the gas company. So that's point number one. Point number two I want to make, and I am probably going to regret saying this because I'm not trying to make it more complicated, but this question of sponsorships and grants dovetails very closely with the question of admission tickets to events. A lot of these organizations have luncheons, breakfasts, dinners, galas, all kinds of things. And for most of these organizations that are charitable in nature, those are used for community relations building. Of course, they want elected officials to attend those, but also they're looking for fundraising, right? That's why they hold these events. And so this question of grants and sponsorships can either be segregated or they can be combined. So if the council wants, you could have a policy that only deals with grants and in no way involves council getting tickets for the luncheons, for all those things that are related to city business. You could separate all of that out. or you could make it one policy that has to do with our sponsorship policy and combine them together. Either way is okay. But the reason I mention it here is because a lot of these partners do hold those events. You know, Ruth Eckerd is on this list as a perfect example. Because they are a city vendor, we are very much restricted ethically in the ability of ourselves as reporting individuals to accept freebies from Ruth Eckerd. Another example is the Phillies, right? The Phillies clearly are a city vendor. You know, we do business with them. And so because we are very limited, if not outright restricted, from our ability to accept freebies from some of these organizations, and because it's actually harmful to those organizations if we do, I highly recommend that the city support these organizations by kind of an omnibus sponsorship approach. So for example, if you say as a city that you want to allocate so many dollars to Ruth Eckerd and you want to include that as part of our sponsorship, that includes, for example, tickets to their dinner or breakfast or whatever it is, that's fine because the city is absorbing those costs. I don't think it's a big deal one way or the other, whether it comes from the gas company or it comes from general fund. But what's important ethically is that the city absorb those costs. We do not really want our vendors or city lobbyists absorbing those costs. That's going to be potentially a serious ethics problem. And so that's what I've tried to be very, very careful of, to make sure that when these events come up, whether it's Ruth Eckerd, whether it's Amplify, whether it's Clearwater for Youth, or 100 other organizations that we're involved in, that we really ought to have the city paying for that stuff. That will benefit both us so that we don't get into hot water ethically, but also for our partner organizations so that they're not being pressured into giving us freebies, free tickets, things like that, which end up hurting our charitable partners, which is not, I think, what anyone is trying to do. I just wanted to say that. I don't want to make it more complicated, but just to point out that this issue of what we support financially dovetails with this question over the admission tickets and things like that.
For that, yes.
But David, too, when you say the city pay for that stuff and all that, that means taxpayers. When we say the city pays for that, we mean taxpayers will pay for that, correct? Because all of our city money is taxpayer money.
Well, not all of it, because as you pointed out, right, some of it is from the gas customers, some of it is from utility customers, but I think it would be fair to say that those are public funds. And so ultimately, those are uncomfortable but hard decisions for council to make, is what level of public funding, if any, are you comfortable in allocating to these sorts of events?
Right.
I will say that if my choice is between the city spending public funds for council members to attend these official events versus council members accepting illegal gifts from vendors or lobbyists, that is a no-brainer for me. So for me, it is hands down preferable for the city to use public funds if that's what it takes to keep all of us out of hot water from an ethics standpoint. However, whether, in fact, that is still a good use of public funds as opposed to council members either paying out of pocket or doing things like that is an open question. It's honestly, there's not right or wrong answers. Where I came from, city of Orlando, they had a pot of money that was allocated for council members to do things like this, meaning to attend events in their official capacity on behalf of the city. Part of the reason that they spent public funds on that, and why a lot of cities do, is because it creates equity among council members of different financial backgrounds. Because if you have a situation where everyone has to pay out of pocket, that means that someone who's independently wealthy, it's no big deal to spend a few $1,000s a year on attending these events. But someone who's not a wealthy member, who's elected to office, that could be a huge hit to them financially. So that's part of the reason why a lot of that spending takes place, but ultimately it is going to be council's full decision as to what level of funding you are comfortable with for these partners.
Okay. Anything else right now? So, we all good with what was discussed? All right, let's move on. Parking update.
think it's listed under city manager's reports, but we'll see, I guess.
Yes,
This will
it is.
this will probably come to me at some point.
Good afternoon. Jeremy Alshouse, Parking Manager for the city. I've been asked to come here and facilitate a discussion on parking in the downtown. I don't know specifically what your questions or what we're trying to get at there. In the past, I've done some presentations, so rather than drone on with a long, drawn-out presentation, I'll just go to a real quick overview, see what questions or suggestions everybody has, and we can figure out the best way to move forward after that. As you all know, parking. When we talk about the downtown parking, we're talking essentially for our group, we're working between the Water, Court Street, Drew Street, and Myrtle. That's the areas where we have paid parking. The reason that we have paid parking is to promote turnover. That's always kind of been the driving force. It is a little bit weird right now. We make a heck of a lot of our money. I've said this in previous presentations on the beach than we do in downtown. The downtown is rather underutilized. Everybody knows that at this point. And the rates are remarkably low compared to the beach for that reason. Recently, it's come up, we back in, over the summer, we had the sound opened up at Coachman Park. We had the opening week, and culminating with the fireworks. We worked not only all of our parking became available, the parking that was owned by the county was made available to us after hours, and we also worked to get a bunch of private property owners on board to help us with theirs. And all total, we ended up with over like 4,700 parking spaces that were made available to the public, and I was generally pleased with how that worked out. We had parking left over all of the days. There was even a little tiny bit in the grass parking lot that's over there by Court and Myrtle. There was a few spaces. They didn't find those. It was very packed. I think the estimate was 15,000 people or so showed up for the fireworks. We also saw that very recently here, the Chicago concert associated with the Rock and Roll Marathon weekend. That was the first almost sold out concert that they had, or maybe it was sold out, close to 9,000 attendees. That as well, we still had spaces in those grass lots there next to the MSB. So we're meeting our obligations as far as parking to the public as it stands right now, with downtown being at its current volume. We actually probably saw a bigger demand the next morning for the marathon. There was a lot of folks that had showed up to run, and whereas concerts, you might see 3-4 people in a car that are going to the concert. I think runners, they have more than one person in the car, of course, but almost one car per runner, and they have their entourage with them and that kind of thing. So we probably saw more cars this Sunday morning, because we got very few complaints, but we did get a little complaints Sunday morning because they were parking in church parking lots that were needed for services and things like that. So we're also keeping an eye on the spaces that we currently had that we utilized during the events that were ours, that will be going to possible future development. That's the grass lots and the lot associated with where the new city hall is to be built. The CMA lot, that might be developed someday. And those are big ones. All total, all those lots as well as the old city hall lot, and those, there's probably a little less than 600 parking spaces there that could go to development at some point if all of those properties were developed. But we are building that new parking garage at Pierce and Osceola, roughly 550 spaces. We'll see what it all works out to when the final design is done. So that'll kind of supplement or make up for all of the spaces that we lose due to development at the ones that are proposed for development. Obviously, we've got to keep in mind our future considerations, the county properties as they become possibly available to us as they move on. That might be an avenue for additional parking in the future. There's also, of course, going to be future development. Hopefully, the downtown does take off and becomes very reinvigorated. We'll need to be ready for that, as well as additional activities at the Sound. I'll close it there with what I wanted to talk about up front, and open it up and take notes for anything that you folks have to ask me about.
Questions?
It's not so much of a question, but a commentary. So I live downtown, so I'm very aware of what's going on, and I cannot be more thrilled that the park and the amphitheater proved to be the catalyst that we had hoped for. I've also seen an increase in people in downtown, especially in the last 2 weeks, because now we're activating the park for a marathon, for markets. We also have a lot of new, possible, exciting things happening. For example, we have had some great conversations, positive conversations with the Salvador Dali Museum, where Mr. Slaughter and I went for a tour, and Ms. Poirier and I addressed their directors. And so we're having positive conversations about having their presence in downtown, specifically the library. And that is just one of many things that we're looking forward to, right? So even though, you know, we're kind of looking at it today, but if we're looking at it in the future, I think that we're just starting. I think downtown is going to be robust every weekend, especially when we activate the park every Saturday and Sunday. The concerts are going to increase in number, and there's other projects that are too early to mention, but very promising. I am very sensitive to the fact that a lot of the parking has been absorbed by the old City Hall, the new City Hall sites, as well as the PSDA, which, if it goes well, and I think it will, in the next year or so, it will not be available. So for me, it's very important that all these wonderful possibilities be supported by infrastructure and ensure its success. One of those things is parking. So I was thinking, and I was hoping to get some feedback from my council members, I would love for the city staff to engage in conversations to either have a long-term lease or purchasing the property across from the library. To me, that's being proactive and ensuring the success of our future endeavors. So I would need the council's support in directing the staff for those conversations with those property owners.
Okay. Comments on that? Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was happy to see both 4th of July and the Chicago concert we had, which we had a lot, that was sold out, lots of people down in the park. Everybody seemed to find parking. However, the county, we had to make a call, I think, because they had their little, they had their garage closed over by the courthouse. They got it open, luckily, for that event, but is that something that will be ongoing, that they will let us have after 5 o'clock, that gate up where we can use their?
I believe it's set for 6 o'clock Monday through Friday, and it's supposed to be open on the weekends. But to your point, that's a good thing for me to check on and find out exactly what their schedule is. Okay. And I do know they did not make adjustments for holidays. So oftentimes we think, oh, a holiday is great, it should be up. But if it's on a Tuesday, it's still down from the morning until 6 o'clock in the evening. So we can definitely check on that.
Yeah, if you could check into that helps. And then this isn't really anything to do with downtown parking, but it has to do with beach parking. I do want to have a conversation at some point about what we can do for employee parking on the beach. I think that's a conversation that we need to have at another time, but I had some complaints over the weekend with maybe there were newer businesses on the beach that are having a time with their employees getting tickets. And I know that some of the businesses on the beach that have been around for a while and have employees management has some kind of program that they can help their employees where they pay I'm not really sure what it is, but I think I'd like to find out, because if I get people asking me about it, I want to be able to tell them where to go if they need to talk to you, or who they need to talk to about that.
Right. and we can, I can try to parlay it into a downtown discussion, because if downtown goes as well as we all want it to, maybe we'll have these problems someday downtown as well.
Exactly.
Now, we do offer some discounted rates for folks that prove that they are employees at the beach. They can get a permit that allows them to park. What we're seeing downtown or on the beach is that there's just so much demand there that short of reserving an unknown number of spaces for an unknown number of people that may or may not show up, because everybody doesn't work all the time. So even if they bought a permit, they use it some days, they don't use it other days, and so it becomes very, very difficult. So all our permits currently on the beach are pretty much sold on a first come, first served basis. You can have the permit, you have your right to park there, but if you get there and the lot's full, there's really not a whole lot we can do about that. We try to encourage them to use some kind of alternative transportation.
Right.
Everybody's really, really attached to their cars these days. I get that, I understand that. Me too. But that's the reality of it. The downtown is not that way yet. There's still ample parking available for the vast majority of the time. So but again, if it does take off and go gangbusters, we may be in that same situation, and that's when we start looking at, from an urban planning standpoint, what do we do? It's usually one of the very common methodologies used now. This is for more urban and more built-up areas. The beach may kind of fit in there with how busy that it is you have some kind of remote area a mile or so away from the core downtown, and then you provide some kind of shuttle service or some kind of way for them to get there. I don't know that I don't think we're there that for our downtown currently, but if we did have something like that for the beach, would it be utilized? So all that stuff could be definitely looked at and that type of stuff. But again, we still get I don't feel, I leave, we hear all the excuses why they can't. Nope, I need my car parked right out in front of the place that I work.
Right.
We can't facilitate that at the beach.
Well, we have some possibilities. One is the waterborne transportation, the ferry service, and, but we're still kind of working the bugs out on that. But that would be a good alternative, park on the mainland, but I don't know how the schedule works out for people that get off late, whether they can get back. So those are things I think are maybe another time, another conversation.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I was fighting for some of the folks who work on the beach earlier this year, and it's really, I don't know, I think it's kind of shameful. These folks pay for a monthly parking pass, and then they show up and there's no space for them, so they have to park on the street, and then they get a ticket, so they're being double hit. And I proposed some changes that, went nowhere. But that's terribly unfair. Talking to the owner of a bar down there, they can't keep employees. One person came in, worked the first day, got a ticket and said, well, I can't afford to be here, and they were gone. So it's a real serious problem that we have to address. And I definitely don't think we should be punishing people who actually pay for a monthly pass and then there's no way to use it.
I understand where you're getting at, and like I said, it is a complex problem. If we allowed unlimited, here's your pass for anywhere you can find a spot, they would park in the most advantageous places for them, not necessarily take up the primary parking spaces or the priority parking spaces for the citizenry and that kind of stuff. So that's why we give them specific lots that they can use and that type of thing. So it is complex, I will get that. Again, we still defer to some folks especially on the beach, some businesses, they've made private deals with folks that have parking available to them. So, does the problem, and this is a, city management question to answer, how far is the city responsible to go to facilitate the parking for private business? And I'm not looking for an answer, that's just one of those overarching questions that, how far do we go? How much do we subsidize private business in their endeavors to keep their employees and that kind of stuff? It's tricky. I'm not pushing it off. I'm just saying it's a complex question.
And I don't think we can say we're providing them a lot to park in if we're not. And as far as, getting the choice spots, well, they're not guaranteed a choice spot. They may be already filled in by other cars. It's just a serious problem on the beach, and it's going to be just as serious downtown, and we really have to take some action because soon the old city hall lot is going to be built on, so those spaces will be gone. We'll have the garage across the street from that, but we do need more garages. As you said, the CMA lot is a possibility. It's to the point where I think it may be reasonable to consider eminent domain for some of these empty buildings downtown. We have to support the folks who actually have businesses and support the amphitheater and the park and all the events we want to have down there. And to have people sitting on empty buildings for 7 years or more just doesn't seem justifiable.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this? Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So Lena, you want a direction about whether or not Jennifer can have discussions with the property owner across from the library?
Yeah, I just acknowledge that everything takes so long, right? And there's all these procedures, and I want to be proactive rather than reactive. So I would like the council's support in directing the staff to initiate conversations with the property owners across the street from the library for our future needs, whether it be parking or others.
Okay.
Is that something that the council would support?
Sure.
Well, and I'd be interested in knowing like what the Osceola plan looks like, because I don't know that we'd want a whole line of parking garages along Osceola, but yeah, I mean, I think that property's up to be discussed anyway between, yeah. I don't have a problem with discussions.
Thank you.
Going on.
And just to be clear, the property owner is Scientology, right? And yeah, sure, we can have discussions.
Yeah.
I'm
not sure
open to
why
discussions.
nobody's saying that, but that's who owns it. So thank you for bringing it up.
It is, and we did make that, the opening of Coachman Park made that a very attractive lot, very attractive.
So do I hear support?
Yes. Anything else? All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
City Attorney, verbal reports?
Thank you, Mayor. Since we're talking about downtown, I have heard over these past months feedback from both elected officials and from staff, concerns relating to the alignment of vision downtown. As we know, in the city of Clearwater, the city council serves as the CRA, which is a good thing. That's different from a lot of cities. In a lot of cities, the CRA is appointed by the council, but sometimes that can lead to incongruous outcomes between what the CRA is doing versus what the city is doing. Here, because our elected officials serve as the CRA, it creates a strong unity of purpose between the CRA as well as the city, and I think that's been beneficial. However, we do not necessarily have that same unity of purpose with the Downtown Development Board. The question then for the council is whether the council feels that this is the right time in light of Coachman Park, in light of the Peace Memorial Garage, and every new City Hall, PSTA's Intermodal Center, Gotham, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that's happening downtown, whether the council is interested in taking a greater role in terms of either oversight of or participation in the downtown development district. I will say this is not a right or wrong answer, but I do understand the argument in favor of it because the council already sits as the CRA. If this is a direction that the council is interested in, it is something we would have to discuss with the legislative delegation. It is a good time of year to have that conversation because the legislative delegation typically meets end of October. So this would actually be the time if the council is interested in going that direction. If the answer is yes, then that's something that the clerk and I would likely mention to the legislative delegation when we go to their meeting in a couple weeks. I forgot the exact date on which that's scheduled. Just looking at me like there's...
If it's the pleasure of the council, I can place an item on the agenda for Thursday to provide the city attorney and myself some direction in terms of approaching the delegation, what the possibilities may be.
You have my support.
Anyone else want to chime in?
This would be for Wednesday, right? Because our meeting's Wednesday this week, yeah.
Yes, Wednesday.
I'm fine with that.
I'm in.
All right.
Me too.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. Anything else from the attorney?
No, sir.
Okay. Council discussion items. We're going to table this for about 6 months. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Discuss city attorney and city manager salaries. Who would like to start? Yes, sir.
So, city attorney salary, is that where we're starting, or city manager? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can talk.
Okay.
Sorry, I just got to lower down the microphone, you know.
I didn't realize someone was going to give us a presentation. Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, Chris Laurels, Interim HR Director. At the last council meeting, the performance was reviewed for both the city manager and city attorney. Typically, at the subsequent meeting is when the council will have a discussion in regards to any type of pay increase. There has been a 7% increase budgeted. Anything above that would require budget amendment. Please note, our SAMP group receives a 6% general wage increase, and the city manager and city attorney are not included in the upcoming pay and class study. I've provided you with the salary of the comparable municipalities, which does show our salaries for the city manager and city attorney are behind market average. Last year, the city attorney received an 8.5% increase, which was paid retroactively to the beginning of the fiscal year, and the previous city manager was determined to be the wrong fit for the city. This item would fall under the strategic objective 5.1, attract and retain top quality personnel through the maintenance of a competitive compensation program. Please note, we need to make an update on one of the attachments that was accidentally doubled before the council meeting. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions, comments? Who wants to lead off? No one has anything to say?
Well, I remember saying good things about the two of you before, so it seems like a raise would be a doable thing. And I understand, I've heard recently that the outside attorney costs for the city have gone down dramatically this past year. So right there, there's something. So I'm certainly supportive of a raise.
Okay. I am also, but other input?
I've been hearing consistently that we are not comparable to other cities, and we have already lost some really wonderful and talented people because of that, and so I'm very sensitive to that. And of course, that would include our top two. And so it's very obvious to me how we all agree on how happy we are with both your performances based on our last evaluation. So I am definitely in support of a raise. I just want to hear from my fellow council members what numbers are they thinking of? Because when we're looking at averages, we're well below the average in comparable cities, and I don't think that's fair, especially since this city is truly unique in its challenges, and I see that almost every day. And so I would hope my fellow council members would support me in thinking that at least bring it up to the average.
Other comments?
Okay.
Go, sorry.
So I agree the same thing. The city attorney, I mean, we just did our evaluations last meeting, and the city attorney did do a very good job of consolidating a lot of legal services into his department and lowering the cost. We even heard about it tonight. So I'm very happy with his performance. I think he will keep doing above average performance, and I'm for a raise to, there's two different charts I'm looking at. One's based on population and one's based on FTEs. It seems like for population, we're 14% underpaid, and based on FTEs, in other words, number of employees of other municipalities, we're about 5% underpaid. I think I would be fine with an 8%, break it right in the middle.
I appreciate those comments. I was, and I agree, the recommended, what you have budgeted is a 7%, correct? And certainly, I think we all gave our city manager, if we're looking at that, a glowing review. One thing I think we should consider too is, while we've got FTEs and population, we don't have any indication of how much experience these city managers have. And while Jennifer's done a phenomenal job, especially being thrown into the frying pan with incredible challenges, I wonder what the experience of, average years of experience of some of these other city managers. But am I reading this correctly? If I look at the first chart there, that, and I'm one who likes to make sure our employees and leadership is at least competitive with average, but would that mean there would be a 21% increase to get up to 291, 241? Is that right?
Yeah, if you're looking at the population
Yes, the population.
salary grid,
Yep.
then yes, it shows a 21.1% difference between the average and what Jennifer is getting.
If we're looking at the population of the municipality, right? And then if we look at the FTEs, then the differential is a lot smaller.
Correct.
Okay.
These are all obviously city manager form of governments. There's no strong mayors.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that. So are we making this decision today, or are we going to talk about it again Thursday night?
Council, typically the decision is made at Thursdays. You usually discuss, raise questions, and then a vote is taken on Thursday.
Okay. I would prefer to give my thoughts Thursday night, if that's okay with everyone else, but you guys, do what you want, but that's just my... Is there any other discussion at this point?
Can you provide any information about, experience with these at all, or a
I
few?
can try and get the
that are
information,
close?
but I don't know if I'll get it before Wednesday's meeting,
Wednesday.
right?
It's okay.
It's Wednesday, so,
Okay.
we can try our best.
Gonna do it during the Beach Boys concert Thursday night. That would've been good, right? All right. Any other discussion for right now? Okay. Any new business from the council? Yes, ma'am.
So I think at the next work session, I'll give an overview of the regional AHAC meeting that I attended and what different cities are doing related to housing.
Sounds good. Look forward to it. Anything else? All right, good meeting. Won't belabor this. We'll see everybody next time.